oh my fucking god, look at this effect. Literally rotate the man like a rotisserie chicken. I'm equal parts impressed by our usage of coding and it ruins the seriousness of the scene completely. So, I am back. I ended up playing the entire 12.5-hour game in like one session, destroying myself to the point of exhaustion. I was chewing on a pair of scissors that were on my desk to keep myself awake. So anyway, this will be a big in-depth review of all of that. Do you want to instead see my first reaction to the first half an hour of the game? Go over here for the Random RPGmaker episode. If you're more interested in seeing my fanfic ideas of what I would rewrite this route into, that's an upcoming video. Just to clarify, I'm only reviewing the Jaemis route of Tailor Tales, because the strange thing about this game is like that is one entire complete game. This game, so to say, is more of a collection of like, currently 5, it's going to be up to 8 when it's finally finished. 8 entirely separate games set in like different universes, different characters. The protagonist is totally different genre and everything like that. It's sort of like an anthology series where the one connecting thread is that they all use the same gameplay framework of like running a tailor shop. So just as an example, you've got like regular tailor shop in real life, working part-time as a tailor shop when you're a high schooler, high school drama time, fantasy tailor in medieval England, superhero tailor, aliens are here now, it gets wild. A brief recap of the starting events on the route, which we did see in the Random RPGmaker video for people who haven't watched that one. The premise as described on the route introduction screen is, you are a tailor in a world where superheroes exist. You have a superpower of your own, but you only use it to create super suits for other superheroes. One day you get into some sort of situation where you're saving someone who you think is a superhero, but oh gasp, maybe he's actually a villain. You will find out that this description is very non-indicative of what the route is actually about. Like, you'd think from that description it would be like the plot, like, oh, you'd spend some time with him, like, thinking he's a superhero, you'd, like, get to know him and you feel betrayed finding out he was a villain. No. The main character finds out he's a villain, literally, like, within 5 minutes of thinking he's a hero. You start off doing a regular superhero tailoring job. You spend the entire time with various NPCs related to this. You have your superhero friend Kane. You have a cool mad scientist brother whose name is customizable and always looks like you. I went with calling him Smigor in my version, because for no apparent reason I decided to play this game as Igor from Dragon Quest Monsters Joker. Rest assured that me not taking things seriously in this one way does not reflect me taking everything else incredibly seriously in the rest of this review. Kane and Smigor, they have shipping teams together and like seriously way better pairing than the main pairing on the route. Anyway, you just have some various slice of life adventures for them for like half an hour, as well as setting up all the lore of a superhero world, which is going to be completely irrelevant because after this chapter none of that stuff comes up for the next 14 chapters. You never actually meet the love interest at all in the first chapter until the last 5 seconds. Then he literally bursts in through the ceiling, and the entire stage premise of you mistaking him for a regular superhero, it literally is over in one sentence. The last line of the chapter, like 5 seconds after you meet him, is, oh, I guess he's a villain after all. I really think it's an odd idea to describe an entire route over something that happens in a space of 2 sentences in the first chapter and never again. And so it covers everything we saw in the initial preview playthrough, and now we'll be getting back into my full, complete, massive 12 hours of absolute alien hell. Before that, it probably helped to cover some things like outside of the route itself, which I found and were a bit strange, and I'll just have a bit of comment about. Why is this called the James route? The character's name is Jaemis. There's like one point very early on where someone mistakes his name for James and it's like, no, actually it's Jaemis, and then, oh, okay, no one ever says it ever again. It's like all the interface calls him James, every character in the actual route calls him Jaemis, and his name is actually Jaemis. I don't really get what's going on there. Why did they give him a false name in the description and then nowhere else? He's also shown in a regular human outfit on that, and he doesn't wear that outfit until the very end of the game. I feel like they were deliberately trying to hide that he's an alien, and I don't know why. If you just described what's in the route, people have more of an idea if they want to play it or not. One thing I really like about the game, the CG images in this game are genuinely really, really good, and they also handle the customization options really well, because that's the thing I've seen in a lot of visual novels where they let you customize the main character. They usually have them look really out of place and just be entirely in flat colors and say like, oh well, it would be too much work to like do all these different shadings for dark and light skin and stuff, so we just made you in plain colours the entire time. Whereas this game, it it surprised me you have like fully shaded, different shaded skin tones for whichever one you picked for your character. And like in this scene, you can't see him. It's actually partially animated with your hair waving. It's only like 2 frames or so, but it's still really impressive that you managed to handle like full-on shading while also having an animation happening at the same time. This I think is one of my favourite scenes in Naruto because it just looks so cool, the hair all splayed out like that. It's a shame she has to cut it in the big dramatic, not very dramatic cutting scene like 5 seconds later. I laughed my ass off so hard when I was just randomly browsing the menus and then there's a button that says choose whether you're a virgin or not. It just took me by surprise. Like, divorce from that context, it's nice to give you choice on what you want to have in the NSFW scenes, but I'm playing the version which doesn't even have them, so I don't know why this button is here. It didn't affect anything in my game. You have to grind clients over and over and over and over again to earn the coins that you need to get to actually buy each successive like scene of actual romance. It is really set out like a gacha game, and it's really bizarre because it's not a pay-to-win game. It's not a mobile game of any kind. It's like someone made a loving tribute to the worst things that everyone hates about app games. Let me just have a random screenshot that made me laugh because the random clients you can get have randomly chosen names from various different video game characters, and it made me laugh imagining Byleth Fire Emblem wearing this. Also, just to go back and revisit the list of triggers, now I've finished the entire game, I can probably judge just how incorrect some of these are. When they put mention of sexual assault, that I think is kind of overstating what happens. Like, it's literally only mentioned as in like, oh well, I'm glad that these people who kidnapped me are not sexually assaulting me in any way. Like, the word rape is used briefly once to say he didn't rape me, and that's it. Violence towards others still remains the most woefully undescriptive thing I've ever seen in any trigger warning. Superhero discrimination is not even really much of a point of the entire plot. It literally comes back at the very end. It's mentioned in chapter 1, and then at the very end you fight this evil group of people who were not even part of the plot for most of the story. I do think, honestly, the choice of which they put in the main section, which they put in the blocked off section, makes it seem like these are more important, but they're not. These are all the things that happen the least in the story. And then, after I did that route, I briefly dipped into another route to like just see the beginning of it and see some things. Like I could make a better judgment on what I was saying about the weird trigger warnings. The second route I clicked had even weirder, more unintuitive, unuseful trigger warnings. This is so confusing. Why is one trigger, MC lies to Grey, not a spoiler, but it's a spoiler, Grey lies to MC? Why is that? Why are those categorized as like more severe than the other? Like, could you just put like MC and Grey lie to each other and cover it there? And also like sexist remarks, spoiler warning, sexual harassment. It looks like you've downplayed how serious it is in the main one, and then like you've said exactly how serious it is. Like, if I had read that, I would have thought, oh, so it's not full-on sexual harassment, it's just sexist remarks. No, it is full-on sexist harassment. Okay. Also, I was really confused. What does maledom mean? I had to look up what that means. I've heard of femdom meaning like, it's like a different way of saying like a female character is a dom, but it's also like a philosophy almost, being dominated by a woman in a specific way regarding to like sexist societal norms. It's not just a woman who's a dom, it's like, oh, women are so great and better than me, a man, and oh, crush me and make me feel like this in particular. It seems that maledom is like the very much less used version where it just means a man who crushes a woman and says men are better than women, which doesn't necessarily, I think the reason no one uses this word is because you don't need a word for that. That's just the default state of like 99% of all really trashy romance novels. It's taken as that's the default state for humanity almost. If you maybe like not use a slang specific to the fandom for that kind of thing, and anyone outside of it wouldn't understand. Even me, who has heard of femdom, didn't know maledom existed until I looked it up, and I was just like, this could have been so much more easily explained if it was just like, sexually dominant man does sexist related dominance. I don't know, just literally anything other than that. I feel when it's covering any kind of BDSM related trigger, it helps to like explain it in terms that people who are not in the BDSM subculture would understand. Also, it's just kind of annoying that like every single route I've clicked on so far has had like his sexual behaviours, and it's all like almost exactly the same. It's just like different variants of like, he's always dominant, he's never submissive, he's rough and he's kinky and he's confident dominant, and he always chases you first, and he's always cocky, and he's always a dominant one. Almost every single option that's currently in the game is about like a grumpy tsundere guy who's the dominant in a relationship. And maybe if you're planning out a game with multiple routes, you should think about like the ones that you release first should be ones that have a bit of variety to them. Because that's also, it's strange, like the first 3 routes, they were all regular, normal, modern day city types, and then Jaemis is the first one, which is like a fantasy setting. And then all the characters that are planned to have like submissive or like non-dominant, non-sexist man are all on the back end of it. They're all going to be the last ones coming out, which is just, to me that sounds like a bit of poor planning on the creator's part. But it might just be like, these are the ones that they prefer writing, and I don't know. I'm not judging anyone from that. Even if you are into like maledom and like men dominance, you're not a bad person. That's just a fetish you have. Oh, also, just a helpful tip if you're playing this game, all of your custom outfits, they get saved as image files in this particular address in your files. It's like you go into like Steam and wherever it's installed, and you go to Tailor Tales, and then www.img pictures fashion completed. Then you'll find savable image files of all the fashion you have. There it is. That's a good little bit of helpful tip. So yeah, I think I'll go over describing like general problems, general things I liked, general things I didn't like, overall opinions before I get into. I took like a bunch of screenshots and try and go through like the events of everything that happens in the story and all these particular comments I have, trying to give you like the best possible review I can. First thing I'm going to say, it's not about superheroes. Surprise, instead it's about aliens. All the things I was saying before about the trigger warning and the description being really vague and confusing, it's like 25 times multiplied playing the actual route. That's one of the biggest problems I had with it, is that it doesn't seem to settle on what it wants to be about. Do you know how the first chapter was entirely about this big cast of random NPCs, these side characters, and there was no mention of the love interest at all until the last 5 seconds, where in the last 5 seconds it's immediately, oh, he's a villain. After that point, you don't see any of those side characters again for 14 chapters. Literally over the halfway point of the game is when it actually gets back to the superhero thing. Instead, you have 14 chapters of suddenly aliens kidnapping you. They did not mention at all that this was a kidnapping-based romance. Again, the trigger warning not very clear. They mentioned kidnapping exists in the plot. They mentioned genocide. They didn't mention it was like alien genocide of humans. You have been kidnapped by this alien villain guy. He's taken you off to his home planet to use a bargain chip. It's also like a mistaken for royalty plotline. He thinks you're the princess of the Earthlings, and you've got to keep up this ruse to keep yourself alive. And then like there's like loads of really interesting world building, because then it goes from like half of the game point is like you being in his ship and it's all very alien. Then once you get to this planet, it's all very like fantasy Arabia. It's all about political intrigue and like getting to know all these side characters. That's a recurring thing for the entire story, is that there's always more of a focus on the side characters. You barely even get to see the main love interest. It's very strange. But then after you get to that point, you then go back to Earth, and then all the side characters come back, and now we're back about being superheroes again. For about 2 chapters, where it seems like we're going to have a training arc to defeat, like, Jaemis' more evil boss who was forcing him to be evil in the first place. He's not really evil, ooh. That goes for like 2 chapters, and then it just turns into a buddy comedy, where like you and Jaemis and the other alien who I want to date more than him infinitely more, are all just living together in a house, having funny times, and like, oh, I'll teach the aliens how to use like arcade sticker machines and stuff like that. And then it suddenly switches. Now it's detective thing where you're finding out the secret past of your parents who have not been mentioned at all since chapter 1. Like it's like chapter 22, and suddenly they become a plot point again. And then that's resolved, and then we actually go into the final confrontation with Jaemis' evil boss to save the whole of Earth, and he finally gets his redemption arc. It feels rushed because we spent so much time on wildly different things. They really fleshed out like 5 other plot lines and didn't flesh out the main one. That is overall my biggest problem with it, that there is very little love content in this whatsoever. There's very little screen time for the love interest at all. The majority of it, he's just an arsehole who kidnapped you, and you don't believe there's anything good about him, and he does nothing at all to indicate that he has a soft side. And then suddenly, for no reason, out of nowhere, he's like sacrificing himself to save your life, and then you're like, oh, maybe he's good after all, but there is no indication given whatsoever why he suddenly changed his mind like that. And then he doesn't even act nicer after that. That's at the halfway point. The exact halfway point is when he suddenly sacrifices his life, and then you go back home. And 6 chapters after that, he's continuing to be an arsehole, but then he's like, oh, well, he did sacrifice his life to save me, so maybe he's not really an arsehole, while he continues to be a total arsehole and shows no signs whatsoever that he's changed. And then in the very final segments of the game, like if I recall correctly, it's chapter 22 is when, in the game's own words, we have our first conversation as reasonable adults. And then chapter 25 is when he actually starts showing any kind of love towards you whatsoever. This is a 28 chapter game. 3 chapters before the end is when the first romance scenes happen. It's bizarre. Throughout the entire rest of the story, there is nothing except just, oh, he looks sexy and that's the only reason why you're supposed to care or want to date him. He's a horrible asshole, he's treating me like shit, but sometimes he takes his shirt off. It's weird because when they finally got to it, his redemption arc was really well written. There was a genuinely really cute confession scene and everything. It was romantic, there was nice imagery, there was all like magical super alien different mating technique thingies where he glows and he flies in the sky and he does like a cool like fireworks display to show how much he loves you, and it was genuinely sweet and cute and interesting, and had like one of the most visually impressive CGs in the game, and it's just in the last 5 seconds. I was like, I finally started shipping it, why has it ended? And the big problem about all this is, while all this is happening, the game throws out so many side characters. There are so many characters. Every single one of them is infinitely nicer than him, has way more chemistry than you. The first chapter I was like, oh god, I love our brother character so much, I would die for Smeagol. But the next chapter is like, I would die for Eeyore. The next chapter, like, I would die for Bilius. I would die for, what's his name, Matthias or something, the brother. And then there's like Lana or Lena or something like that. I can't even remember the names of all the side characters, but they are all really good, and I don't know how this writer can be so good at writing endearing characters and genuine chemistry and genuine romance with 50 other people and then fuck it up with the one guy I'm supposed to be dating. I'll get to all that when I go through it like piece by piece and break down this one heck of a wild ride of a story. Conveniently enough, the game itself has this nice graphic here showing all the chapters. I've used this to make some charts show. This is roughly the split of when the plot is about superheroes and when it completely abandoned everything to be sci-fi aliens, and then goes right back again. The alien stuff is so important for so long, and then it's completely abandoned and it only comes back in the last 2 chapters. It's kind of insane. Here we have the rough ratio of when the fuck the romance actually starts. At the most we get some chapters where he's slightly less hateful than others. But it really does just roll out of nowhere right in the last few minutes. And this is just how many times the plot completely changes tack. And now to go into what actually happens in this route. This first section of the game takes place entirely in an alien spaceship. You're on a very long journey back to his home planet. You think it'd be a good time to have some character development and really get to know him, but no. You're locked away in a prison cell and try to piece together what's happening and honestly barely even interact with the love interest at all. The most glimpses you get of him are him just being an absolute complete and utter arsehole, seeing him murder 2 of his crewmates for very tenuous reasons, and spending most of your time just interacting with those crewmates instead of him. Oh, also the space station we're trapped on looks bizarrely like an inkjet printer, so I had to show it, I can't unsee it. Now let's go into various things I noticed and or annoyed me greatly during this section of the plot. So you're zoomed off in a fucking spaceship, away from every bit of the plot that was established in the first chapter. None of it will be relevant ever again or even mentioned until the halfway point of the entire game. Okay, first thing in the route that made me confused, strange writing continuity like break-in logic. The protagonist immediately wakes up and then goes, wow, I haven't eaten anything for 2 days. You've just woken up. How do you know you were unconscious for 2 days? I wouldn't assume that naturally if no one had told me. And then I thought maybe she saw the time on her phone and saw it had changed, but no, you see the graphic of the phone, there is no time displayed on it. So very minor area in the scheme of things, but it started me off on a rolling ball of confusion. I was already confused how the entire genre changed within 5 seconds. One thing I do really like is this game uses the message keywords plugin for RPG Maker MC, which is what I really like and what I want to use on my own projects in future. And I looked it up, and the person who made it is actually the one who made this game as well. So that's a really cool way of like casually advertising your own plugin and showing why it's cool. It's very underutilized though, so I do feel it was kind of just thrown in to be an advertisement rather than really working into the game. There's only like 3 spots where they ever actually do this, where it's like you can mouse over, you can hear more information about these various alien lore things, and there are many times where I would really want to have a mouse over to tell me more information about it, but it just doesn't, and that's a bit of a shame. I wanted to learn so much about the lore. That was the only thing keeping me playing this, is how interesting the lore is. Like the main love interest is practically non-existent. I was like, I want to hear about this alien lore. I want to fight with the rebellion. I want to save everyone. Anyway, this guy here is not our love interest. This is a guy who I wish was our love interest. Extremely weird thing, which I've heard from reviews of the game saying it happens in other routes too, is the MC is very inconsistent on her personality, whether she's like nice or not nice, and she gets oddly violent sometimes, and it seems inconsistent with how she was talking here. Really immediately, when she first meets her love interest, her first thought is like, oh, how can I murder him to escape? And that's the first place her brain goes, and she like very detailed goes into like, oh, I can murder him by using the syringe to inject air into his lungs and stuff like that, and like, what? It happens simultaneously to her being like, oh, I'm just a very normal person, no, I can't stand the violence around here, and it seems a bit inconsistent. There is a lot of a vibe from this. They tried really hard to write the MC to be like feisty and not passive like a usual stereotypical bad games MC, but they kind of went a bit too far, and it does get inconsistent because she does go back and forth between being like completely passive and being completely aggro at a drop of a hat. Also, it kind of makes it hard for like the choices, for kind and fierce choices. On this route, it seems like no matter what you choose, you're always going to be fierce in the actual dialogue, and like you only get to be kind for like 5 seconds after you make that choice, and just zooms back. Also, the problem I mentioned before, that was missed out in the footage, I mentioned the problem before, the first kind and fierce choice in the game is literally choosing to stand up and say, hey, stop being like superhero racist against me, that's bad. And like the fierce choice is to do that, and the kind choice is to go, no, it's fine, I'll just let her be racist to me. And that seems so weird, how being kind is defined as not standing up for yourself. That persists throughout all the route. So often the fierce choice is the logical choice of making that situation. They're like, hey, I'm standing up to you random guy who's imprisoned me and I'm not going to take your shit. And the kind choice is like, oh, I guess I'll just passively take it, I guess. Regardless of what you pick, whenever she's given her own voice in the cutscene, she will always go with like the fierce characterization. So it just feels like maybe this route didn't necessarily need that, and they kind of just threw it in as an afterthought. It is kind of like both options are something that is both kind and fierce, and it's just really confusing. Like there's an option later on where choosing to hug someone is categorized as fierce instead of kind, and it's kind to not hug him goodbye when like it's your best friend who saved you from being imprisoned in a space station. Like, come on, man. The best friend is the better love interest in this complete bullshit, man. I'm already imagining how I will slice his throat with my friend. You really went from 0 to 100. You went from normal, regular, relatable person to I'm so fucking prepared to end a life. And then you went directly back again and never mentioned it again for the entire rest of the story. It was very strange. More continuing screenshots of this exact problem. Her in much detail planning out exactly how she's going to stab him in the heart. Like, I'm not saying it's not realistic in a kidnapping situation to think, oh, I'm willing to kill to get out of it, but it's the fact that she is immediately so ready to it. She's not doubting it, she's not scared in any way about this. She knows exactly and precisely how to do it. It seems really unrealistic to a regular human being who had a regular job. Like, that's specifically her defining characteristic is she's not a superhero. She has superpowers and she wasn't a superhero. So, I don't know. Anyway, Eok is the best character in the entire game, and I want to date him more. He gets genuinely more scenes than our actual love interest. He gets much more everything. Like, you get kidnapped by this guy, and then he basically doesn't talk to you for like a bunch of chapters, and instead you spend all your time bonding and getting to know Eok, who's like the one alien grunt on the team who's actually nice and kind to you, the prisoner, and then he gets loads of like. I genuinely think the entire plot of a story would have played out exactly the same if the main love interest didn't exist and instead it was just Eok. He drives the plot more in every possible way. He's the guy who rescues you from the space station. He was a guy who was secretly part of the rebellion. He gets like a big twist and he's like, oh, no, has Eok betrayed me? No, he hasn't betrayed me. He's actually still good. He's going to save my life. And like, every plot point converges around this really nice dragon man. And he's just such a lovely and cheerful guy too. And he deals with deep hurt because he's had to do like atrocities to stay undercover, pretending to be part of the bad side, but he's really part of the rebellion. It's like so much depth in this. It generally is like they just wrote an Eok route. The entire route could be an Eok route with zero change, except you just change the ending where you suddenly don't date Eok and instead date this other guy who's only just now got character development. Eok is planned to be the 7th route of the game, which will eventually come out in, I think, 2025. But they could legitimately just leave the route as it is and make it an Eok route, just change the ending and nothing else. He's right there. He has more screen time. He has more love. It's everything. I adore this man. I adore this man in every possible way a man can be adored. Oh, that's another weird thing, is the gameplay of this route is really weird because you're defined as being someone who makes super suits, but nothing changes in the tailoring minigame to do that. You don't get any unique outfits for this route. You still continue to just create cardigans and dresses and stuff like that. There is no option to make super suits. And then the way it plays it, you have to grind out to get routes and etc, etc. You get frequently gated points, so you have to do a certain client, you have to do a certain outfit to progress the story. And it makes no sense because you're captured in an alien ship. How the fuck are you, like, astral projecting to your tailor shop back home to take all these clients, which are just ordinary human beings who say, oh, I need a plaid cardigan. That has nothing to do whatsoever with you being in space. Later on, you do actually get, like, unique outfits, like, hey, make a space outfit for this space guy. Make a space prom outfit for space prom. But at the beginning, it's just like, oh, this regular client Andros that needs a plaid cardigan, and you need to do this to progress in escaping a space station 50 bazillion miles away from Earth, somehow. They even specifically say in the story, you haven't been working your tailor shop for months because you've been trapped in space you cannot get. There is no excuse for why it's still happening. It's just, that's the gameplay of the game, and we didn't think about how it actually plays into the plot. Oh, one little thing I did like is the world building of how things work different in alien culture. I felt that was interesting, and it was a good way of making this character who looks exactly like a boring human actually seem more alien. Like, a recurring plot point is that he doesn't understand what nodding is. At the beginning, he's like, oh, why are you so uncompliant? Why are you not saying yes? And she's like, I am saying yes, because his culture doesn't have, like, nodding indicates yes. And then this comes back very, very later on. It's one of the choices you can make to, like, confess your love at the end is you can nod and you can be like, oh, now I understand. And it's, like, a genuinely good, like, resonant emotional moment to bring this back from the start of the game, like a new context and see, oh, how far we've grown, even if you only grew in the last few chapters, and it was very, very, very fast. This would just give me a pet peeve. There's a scene I dislike it, like, whenever it's used in fiction, except, like, one or two exceptions. What is up with, like, that recurring scene of, like, oh, woman has to cut her hair in order to escape being killed, and it's presented as, like, it's such a dramatic and awful moment, like, it's the worst possible thing that could happen to a woman to cut her hair, and it's like, what? I just don't get it. Like, it's never established beforehand that this woman is particularly attached to her hair or that she would be traumatized from cutting her hair. It's just taken as a given that this is a thing that all women would go through. It's like one of the most major your experiences are not a universal moments I've ever seen in fiction. Especially when it's genuinely presented like, oh, a choice between literally dying or cutting your hair. I have to genuinely consider it for a moment because it's such a bad thing to cut my hair. I'm like, what? What? This should have been set up earlier to have such an unusual opinion on things. But no, it's just accepted like this is a normal thing for women somehow. I don't think it is. I don't think it is, mate. I guess it's like meant to like symbolize cutting away your feminine beauty or something. I don't get it because like every single time it's also they're also portrayed as like making the most perfect cut ever and the hair instantly looks like a cute bob. And it happens in here too. She instantly gets like a really great hairstyle. Even though the text is saying, oh, my hairstyle looks really bad because I improvised cutting it to save my life. No, she's actually just portrayed in all the stages as having perfect hair instantly. It's very strange. I think generally the only two situations I've seen this trope handled well is one, Greg in Steven Universe. One, because it's not sexist, it's happening to a man, there's no sexist undertones to any of it, there's no like... Two, because they actually establish why he would be sad of losing his hair. He's an elderly man, he's not going to be able to regrow his hair if it gets cut, and he has like a lot of pride in his appearance because like he had like a history of being a cool rocker guy, and like that's his last thing he has retaining. He works as a car wash now, and he's like, this is my glory days, I've still got my hair. Also, free, he doesn't hesitate when it's like, it was literally like, it was between like saving his son's life or losing his hair, and he's like, no, obviously I'm going to pick the obvious option of like saving a life more over my hair. Like that one bit alone makes it way better than just like, I'm having a big inner monologue of how can I possibly choose between ruining my beauty or literally dying on the floor. It's very odd. And also because they don't do the trope of a cut instantly looking good immediately. His hair does look raggedy and strange when he first does it, and it takes like 1 or 2 episodes to him to come back with it like a new cleaned up haircut. And then 2, Disney Mulan, genuinely good haircutting scene because, again, it establishes why the character would care about cutting their hair, and it's also not so serious. It's not like I have to cut my hair or die, so it doesn't make it seem stupid they would be angsting over it. It's like instead it's like I have to cut my hair to go into disguise as a boy, and it's like it symbolizes this is the first step of me putting on my disguise, which means like for the next months or potentially years I'll have to be hiding myself, and I could be in the middle of like a territory where like if anyone finds out my true self I could get banished or executed, and like she doesn't know it. She'll eventually like she'll make friends with all the soldiers and like she'll save the entirety of China and like prove to the world that women are good and like all of that. She doesn't know how this is going to go. So as far as you can tell, her future is going to be dark, and it's going to be the last moment where she'll like look in the mirror and see like her old self. So it is like metaphoric. Also, it works well in that context because it's a montage. It's a montage of her getting ready and leaving, and like you can't show the entire process of putting on a man disguise. How do we sum it up in one single scene, which is also like thematically and visually interesting in dramatic dramatic song. Cutting your hair with the sword that you're taking up to go and become a soldier, that's interesting, that's really good, that's understandable. We have that cool scene where she turns the sword blade, it's like it shows like two halves of her face, one before and after being disguised, it's like, ooh, and then like she cuts it all in one big swoosh, and it's all really dramatic, and it's a montage, it cuts ahead, it doesn't show like, oh, her hair is perfect immediately, it's like, it cuts ahead to the disguise is complete now. For all we know, she did like better cutting after it cut away, and we just didn't see it. Again, all the problems avoided, genuinely makes sense, and also she doesn't sit for ages in angst about it, she just like has her angst like portrayed entirely through like cinematography and music and songs and good lyrics, and like then we move on to the continuing on of like proving where the angst is coming from, her being angsty about being stuck in a situation of being forced to pretend to be a man and stuff. That is my advice for how to make the random dramatic haircut trope work better. Actually establish why the character is sad about getting a haircut. Don't just assume every woman is sad about getting a haircut. And 2, don't make it literally life or death stakes. Or if you do, make the character react rationally and be like, of fucking course I want to live, rather than like, my hair is more important than my literal life. It's very silly. I had way too much to talk about that, oh gosh. Moving on. Okay, this scene, actually genuinely good. For context, we now enter the second act of the plot. Fantasy Arabia. We arrive on the planet our evil alien captor is taking us to. We find out that Jaemis is not actually the leader of the alien army, he is subservient to a secondary man, who is the real villain behind everything. We then get stuck on the planet they all run, which is the home planet of all the underling aliens, and it's weirdly like the genre just completely switched to fantasy. Everything we learn about these multiple different alien species, it honestly just seems like magic. We now also have to deal with the plot of you being mistaken for human royalty, and having to keep up this charade of pretending to be so that you don't get offed by these assholes. All the while you're meeting various intriguing and interesting side characters, and there is a plot rumbling in the background about some sort of mysterious rebellion. And now moving on to the establishing scene of all, and what was actually really out of place, one of the best scenes in the game. First off, again, the character designs for all the side characters are way more interesting than our main character. If we had gone for this kind of humanoid alien design for our main character, I could have seen more appeal in it, rather than just him looking exactly... I mean, he's supposed to have pointed ears, but you generally can't see them. He always has a hairstyle covering his ears, except one point later on when it becomes a plot point. They really did just go like, here's a complete human man, but we just tell you he's an alien and he has like alien social norms and stuff. If you'd gone for like a design like this, like here you could have still have a beautiful humanoid design which is like stereotypically attractive, but also have some actual interesting alien features. But anyway, this character here, despite him having a really cool character design, he's actually a total arsehole. He's the evil boss of the boss. He's the real evil guy who's making this guy do all the evil stuff, and he becomes the final boss who you have to defeat in the end to like free him from slavery and all that. That's what was all the genocide warning was. This guy has genocided the love interest's entire race and like kept him and his 2 siblings as like the only survivors, being like his hired dogs for like destroying other civilizations and kidnapping people and all that, and they're like, oh, we have to do this because we can never stand up to him, we can never escape, all we can do is like try and bide our time and like hope if we do enough of his bidding he'll eventually set us free and stuff like that. And it's all like it's again, all the stuff about the rebellion and like the ongoing building up of that is really good, and again I honestly feel it could have worked really fine if this character wasn't even here and it was just about Eok, because Eok is an entirely separate, different alien race, but this guy is also enslaved, and also his alien race was native to the planet that they're all on, so he's got even more reasons to be all angry about this and connected to it, and he's the guy spearing the rebellion and like doing all the actual stuff, while our love interest is just standing there like, I'll be completely compliant and I'll murder on his orders because maybe he'll let me free someday. And I get it, in real life, when you're in an abusive situation, it is easy to lose all hope and just get to the point where you're like, you're compliant and you're like, I'm going to deal with it, I have to put up with it, there is no hope of ever escaping. But I get that, it's realistic. But also, in terms of a story, it doesn't do well to contrast that against the guy who is also being abused by the same man, but is actually standing up to him and trying to save people. And again, them just being like, one of them is supposed to be the main character, and he's the one doing the least to affect the plot. But anyway, this scene was generally good and invoked an emotional reaction from me, because at this point, this is the first point we land on his magical fantasy Arabia planet. All we've known about this guy is nothing but him being an absolute arsehole to us while we're imprisoned in his prison ship, and like the only consolation the game ever gives you is like, well, at least he didn't rape me and torture me, he only like beat me a little bit and like locked me in a cage and like deprived me of food and like verbally mocked me constantly and forbid other people from helping me, and also like killed 2 people on screen. It's really bare bones. It is that stupid trope like, oh, the kidnapping romance, like, oh, at least he didn't do all the worst possible things a kidnapper could do, so he's somehow not bad for kidnapping. I don't really get it. So yeah, at this point, all we've heard, this guy's an arsehole. So when I get this text box saying like, oh, this guy we had no idea who this guy is. He just comes in and he smacks him across the face. I'm like, hell yeah, he deserves it. Finally someone giving him what he deserves. And then the scene immediately rolls into, this guy is actually his evil, abusive boss, and he doesn't just slap him in the face, he, like, viciously whips him. Thankfully, that's the thing, like, the violence warning, again, just saying violence occurs does not sum up how severe the violence gets in this. It is really, really uncomfortably severe. Like, they really describe flaying the flesh off a man's back. That's the thing, his alien species is defined by having regeneration, so it's like, oh, I'm going to take advantage of you regenerating by, like, pushing you to the point of death over and over and over again and knowing you won't die, so I can come back and do it again tomorrow. It's really fucking visceral and awful, and it worked really well as making me go, oh, I wanted this guy to get karma for his bad actions, but not like this. This is not right. This guy is clearly the real villain behind the villain, and I want to see him get his ass crushed. Like, at this point, I still didn't give a shit about the love interest, but I was like, treating him with basic decency like any person. Like, don't abuse someone, even if he is an arsehole. Like, he's an arsehole, but it's an arsehole versus a literal abuser. It's like, there's no debate in my mind that the guy on the left is like the worst guy in the entire story, and I hate it. And he's single-handedly responsible for us hating our love interest less. Thankfully, they don't actually show very detailed visuals of the whipping. They show, like, the aftermath of it when he's already started regenerating a bit. There's just, like, a bit of blood splatter on him as he's falling into your arms. But they very viciously describe in, like, really long paragraphs how, like, the skin is being flayed off and how he's trying to... Honestly, the way they describe it seems like it's supposed to be, like, sexual somehow. It's supposed to be getting the audience off. Like, they describe it in so much detail. It's all like, oh, he's so brave and he doesn't surrender. He just bites his teeth and takes it. And it's like, I felt really uncomfortable. Like, if I'd known going in it wasn't just like violence exists, like specifically very violent whipping exists and it's portrayed as sexy. At the same time, you're supposed to sympathise with the character because it's clearly awful and he's not enjoying it in any way. It's a bit at odds of each other. This paragraph here is like as far as I can go into the description without it getting really uncomfortable. It gets much worse than this. Let's just say that. Also, the writing afterwards generally good. Really hammers it back down. Like, at that moment, he was powerless just like me. It really established like, hey, this guy probably has like been raised in this awful environment. He's like internalized. He's acting out on like these are like the social norms in this situation. That's what he's been pressured. Like, he is an abused man who is going on to abuse others, and like, it made me feel like, oh, maybe there is actual potential in this guy. Unfortunately, after this point, it's still like 10 chapters before we get any kind of fucking actual reasonable interaction with him of any way. They have so many times that they almost make him sympathetic, and then they just fucking have him make me do the worst possible thing afterwards, and it just really sucks. Oh, that's also a random thing. While I'm on this screen, and you can see this water pot in the corner, so to speak. That's also a thing which the trigger warnings do not mention at all. There is a lot of piss fetish in this. Not specifically always pee, it's often pee. It's like a fetish, like soiling your trousers unwantedly and being embarrassed about it in public in general. There's like quite a few scenes of like her going like, oh, and I peed myself, oh, I'm gonna pee myself, oh, taunts someone saying she's gonna piss on him, and there's also like menstrual blood, her period starting when she's in alien's face, and then the aliens know what menstruation is, and she has to explain to them in detail, and like it talks about how, oh, it's blood all over, and she's like trying to improvise by like ripping up the throw cushions and like making an improvised pad, and then like, oh, the aliens come and they can smell her menstruation, and she has to explain, oh, I'm in my estrus cycle, blah blah blah, and it's just the most like second-hand embarrassment thing in the entire universe. And the way it's written is like, it's clearly supposed to be appealing to people who find that sexy rather than embarrassing, but for me, who just finds it really embarrassing, I just felt sad for the character, like, oh my god, this poor lady, and I wish it would stop, and I wish that they would have warned me that it was going to happen, because honestly, if I'd known that this game went into like something that so much squicks me out and is very much not my thing, I probably wouldn't have picked this route to do on my first try. I do feel, again, similar to what I was saying about Trigger being written down as maledom rather than like a description of what maledom means. It feels again like the creator maybe has like got too much into like this is what she likes, and she's just thinking about it in terms of like, oh, people who like this, they wouldn't need a warning for it, and like doesn't remember like how you should explain this to people who don't preemptively expect us to be in everything, if that makes any sense. But if it helps, like it's weirdly bookended. It's like the majority of the piss fetish stuff only happens while she's on the Arabian alien planet and in the spaceship. It kind of stops after you get back to the superhero stuff. There's only like one mention of it towards the end. So if you get through the initial piss gate, then it's all smooth sailing from there. Smooth sailing down the river of piss. here's our second really good supporting character, which I wish was a love interest again. We have the random healer, Bilius, who was also kidnapped from a different planet and also enslaved by these aliens. He's got like magical healing powers, and you work for him for a while because the initial reason that you get taken is you get mistaken for a princess. It's all like, oh, faking to be a princess, but then you also get mistaken for being a doctor because Jaemis, when he first saw you use your powers, he mistook it for being a healing power, which really like a Fred power, which you just use to like sew up his wounds. So you get sent over to work for the healer. So it's like 2 levels of like, oh, I have to pretend to be something I'm not, otherwise the aliens will kill me. You have to pretend to be a princess, and then you also have to pretend to be a healer and like to use your powers. Like Bilius helps you out. He's the only one who knows your secret, and he teaches you how to use your powers in order to actually heal people. So it was really cool. And again, spending way more time developing him than the actual love interest. He's being immediately nice to you and immediately appealing, and like you want to know what his secret is and everything. And like it did strike me as a very weird and again strangely inconsistent thing. Is you think immediately his secret that he's also a human, that he was also taken from your planet, but no, it's just a total coincidence. His species is this alien species which looks even more identical to humans, except they're all ginger. That's just it. That's the only difference whatsoever. They're all ginger. I couldn't help but kind of laugh when that was revealed because it seemed so obvious to me that it was going to be like, oh, Bilius has been stolen from your planet years before you and you're going to bond over that and then maybe have a love interest route perhaps. But no, it doesn't take the obvious route. Instead, it takes the strangest possible route. And also it just completely abandons him from the plot after like when you go back to Earth, you never see Bilius ever again. He's barely ever mentioned, and just such a letdown, honestly. Because he's also part of the rebellion. He's also part of like how you find out about the rebellion. It's such that you don't get to join the rebellion. It's like as soon as the rebellion gets rumbled, like they'll be like, oh, we're enemies from you, we're going to frame you for our actions, you're going to get arrested, and then you're going to sent back to Earth, and then it rolls on. It's like that is how it goes. This game rolls on between so many wildly different plot points and never really settles on one of them until the very end, when it's just like, oh, we brought back the plot point we had in the first 5 seconds. That was actually important all along. The third time they introduced way better side characters, we have literally Jaemis, his brother, who's nicer than him. Like literally he looks almost exactly the same except having one different coloured eye, and he's nicer in every possible way. That sadly enough gets subverted later on because they pull a stupid trope of like, oh, he has an evil dissociative identity disorder alter, oh, blah blah blah, etc. And then to be fair, they do a twist on it. It's like, oh, he has an evil split personality, but also his main personality is also evil, just in a totally different way. And like, at least they did something with that, but it does suck when it's just like, it felt like the game was like punishing me for going, I would like to be with the guy who's literally exactly the same as my love interest, but nicer, but going, oh no, he's actually worse than a love interest in every possible way, and you shouldn't trust him. That sucks. But then also his sister, who for some reason looks noticeably different than the other two. I thought it was going to be a twist because she has a plot point which she can't do the big magic power that all aliens of his species can do, called phasing, which is it's spelled like phasing but with the same like AE symbol in the middle that all the names have, so it's pronounced phasing, and it's like basically their eyes glow blue and they go Super Saiyan. It's essentially Super Saiyan with different visuals. The seemingly nice but actually evil brother, he has a genetic condition which means whenever he phases he gets a second evil personality, and also his main personality is also evil in a different way. It's like scheming evil versus just wild berserker evil, and I feel like he shouldn't have been in the plot. I hate him so much. I hate him more than the fact he got my hopes up for a few seconds. But yeah, Lana, she's way cooler. She is like the token bisexual woman of the entire plot, and I really wish she was a love interest particularly. Like, there are so many characters in this I wish were a love interest instead. She's like generally sassy and flirty and playful and has like a mysterious past. Turns out she's secretly the leader of the rebellion, and like she's actually really badass and awesome, because for ages you see like you only hear about her in like a context like her two brothers are like, oh, we have to protect her, oh, that's the reason we're obeying the evil overlord guy is because he's threatened the life of our sister and we have to protect her because she can't fight. Because yeah, that's her condition, is for some reason which is never explained, it's left as a completely dropped plot point by the end. She's not able to phase, unlike everybody else from her species. She used to be when she was a kid, and somehow something about the situation where the evil guy took over the planet robbed her of her ability to do phasing. So her two brothers are like, oh, we have to protect her, she's so fragile, we have to find a way to cure her. And it turns out secretly she's actually the leader of the rebellion, and she was really awesome the whole time. And she was actually fucking doing something about trying to stop the evil guy who dominated their entire planet and killed their family and is now forcing to kill people. Like, seriously, come on. Again, all the main characters shouldn't exist. You could have literally had the plot be Lana instead of him. Like, come on, man. But yeah, I thought the twist was going to be the reason she can't fuzz is because she's actually like half lizard man, because her design looks way like less human than the other two. Like she's got her pointed ears out the whole time. She's got like lizard eyes when she opens them. She's got bigger fangs and stuff like that, and her hair is like a slightly greener colour. I thought it was all going to be set up for her being half lizard, but no, it's never explained. They literally have like in the last 5 minutes, it's like the very end where they're fighting the evil guy, he goes like, oh, so that's how you wish to remember it, that I took your powers. Actually, it's something else. Oh, you're in denial, you have a secret memory. And they never reveal what that secret memory is. Like, none of the possible routes you could ever explain what it was or what really made her lose her powers. It's just completely dropped. Also, I didn't like how this character being bisexual is played for, like, the protagonist. I don't get any choice in saying whether I am or am not disgusted by a bisexual woman. The protagonist will just say, oh, I feel she's being predatory, leering at me. But, like, what? Like, all these men hitting on you wasn't predatory. Her literally just expressing that she has an attraction to women is like, oh, she's being predatory. It's very stupid. Here's, like, the first point where they're just like, oh, well, he tortures you, but he's not torturing you as bad as everybody else did. And like, oh, he's really good deep down. He takes the punishment for everyone else. Again, this contradicts completely everything we saw him, because when we saw him when he was kidnapping us on his space station, we saw him kill 2 of his own grunts for like minor disobedience. Oh, he always takes the punishment for all his grunts. He may seem rude, but he's actually nice. It's like, did you rewrite the man? Is this a consistency issue? Was it just a fake out? You barely even seeing him or interacting with him and just having 5,000 people tell you, oh, by the way, he's actually good deep down, he's got a sweetheart. Can I see some proof of it? No. The way you first get revealed that Caleb's regular personality is also evil, but it's a different type of evil. He's like, honestly, like a dedicated cult member to like the guy who killed his entire family and kidnapped him. He's like, oh, he had a real good reason. He's like a sad result of like how abuse can like completely warp into someone who blindly believes in your abuser and like perpetuates all the abuse against other people. It's really sad, and I don't think the game plays it for enough sympathy. He's just portrayed as like, he is heartless, cruel and evil for this, and he has no redemption. And then in the last 5 minutes they give him a redemption. It's not very earned, and it's just, I feel that they could have done a lot better with him. Again, it's a casualty of like dropping him out of the plot for 1 million chapters. He appears here, they establish that he's actually evil, then they just leave him, and then he comes back at the very, 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 very end. Relatable moment of my exact reaction to Bilious, like, seriously. Even the protagonists say, like, I hate the love interest, I don't want to go with a love interest, I am immediately more attracted to all these other men, I like these other men more, I want nothing more than to be as far away as possible from the love interest. Imagine that for, like, the majority of the entire game, and in the last 5 minutes she changes her mind. It's really not appealing in a romance route. It just made me go, literally, why is there not a branching route choice for any of these other guys? Yeah, and here's what I mean about, there is no appeal whatsoever given to a love interest except, like, contrived anime situations result where, like, oh, you see him naked, he sees you naked, you see him naked, he sees you naked again, you accidentally piss on him, blah, 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 blah. Imagine that being the only interaction you get whatsoever about this guy for, like, over 5 hours of gameplay. Another interesting moment I had about like alien cultural differences. Their species, their stomachs don't rumble when they're hungry, so he thinks that you've got a parasite. That was funny, and that's like one of the only endearing moments he has in this entire really shitty section of the route. I did like all the scenes where it's like, oh, because you're a fake princess dignitary, you get to go all these like various cultural events for the alien planet. You get to like learn all this about the cultural differences. I really like the one where you go to, I think it's like the Maca festival, and you have to collect something called Macawets, where it's like at the end of a festival after you do this big like indigenous dance with Eeyok and his people, and then that was one of the really like most heartwarming moments of the game, is where it's like in that moment we were all welcomed, we were all allowed to be part of the Gaiot, which is the name of the indigenous people. And like her first moment since being kidnapped to this planet, when she actually felt like she was accepted and treated as like an equal person, is when when she's with Eeyok, who's nice to her, and all his people who are nice to her, and they're like inherently accepting and lovely, and just, I care more about saving these indigenous people than I do care about the guy who has joined the evil army to perpetuate their evil and is doing absolutely nothing to stop it. Gah! Eeyok protect. That's how I feel every time I see you, Eeyok. Here's a moment where it establishes his species' regenerative powers only start happening after puberty, so the reason he has scars is because it's like proof that the evil overlord guy was abusing him even when he was a child, and I think that's a good like way of like getting world building to establish a plot point. And But again, it is like you're just being told he has a sympathetic backstory, and like he's totally nice deep down. But then every action he actually takes is like perpetuating the fact that he does just enjoy being awful to you. Like he shows enjoyment for it. It doesn't feel like a guy who's just following orders. Like he does. Even when you're just talking to him, he's just like a complete arsehole, and he spies on you at the bar for a bunch of other shit. And it is like literally the only line he doesn't cross is he doesn't sexually assault people. He's just like, in every other possible way, I will be a horrid arsehole to you. And like no sympathy whatsoever for you, but you should have sympathy for me. Ugh. Oh yeah, I screwed up this. This is the first point since the start where the protagonist actually mentioned anything from the first chapter, anything from her superhero life, anything from her family, her ongoing family mystery. This is like very close to the halfway point. She's like, suddenly I remember my parents died in a fire because I saw a fire at some point. I'm not laughing. Like obviously PTSD in real life is very real, but just the way it was handled here is very awkward. It's like, no previous establishment she had PTSD about fire. It's suddenly out of nowhere just a fire exists. So I'll suddenly remember everything that happened in the first chapter and now actually progress the plot for it. And it comes out of nowhere so fast and it's very not well handled. It did just feel like they went, oh, we've gone so long without progressing that plot, we need to just throw in a little bit so people don't forget about it. Oh, this particular line, I didn't catch the sentence before it, but I laughed because it's like, She's hired to make an outfit for Lana, the one girl of the alien general people, and like she's like, gosh, what design could possibly fit her? Oh, I know, an Arabian belly dance. It's like, I was like, at this point I was like, so we're they're making this sci-fi alien planet like exactly like fantasy Arabia, but like no, but just outright go and say it. Also, the weirdest thing is the sentence before this is like, it's like, oh, is this a normal human fashion? She's like, oh, it's not really a human fashion. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean belly dances aren't a human fashion? I feel that was just very poorly handled. I think maybe she meant to say like this isn't a normal modern day human fashion, but the fact that she says it's not a human fashion was just such a strange turn of phrase. Yeah, here she is. It's not Earth fashion. It was even weirder than I expected. It's not Earth fashion. Belly dancers aren't from Earth. What? I don't want to nitpick on the game for just like an accidentally strange turn of phrase, but it did just make me laugh. Here we have the fourth better bachelor than the one we're actually supposed to be pursuing. Oh my bloody god. Norris, that's his name. I always forget his name because he's the one who gets the least seen out of everyone. He's a sweet younger brother prince of like the evil dictator guy, and like he's got a really cool amazing alien design, but he's actually not an arsehole. He's a sweet guy. He's been kept shouted, he's been kept secret. He doesn't know that his brother is killing people. He's like the saddest thing is he thinks he's being kept secret because like he's very sick and like his brother is trying to help him. It turns out, revealed later on, he actually has like a very rare genetic power of their species which can be used to destroy an entire planet, and the reason he's sick all the time is because his brother is making him use it to destroy all these planets. His brother doesn't give a fucking shit about him. Like they fake you out thinking, oh, maybe the reason the brother is evil is because he wants to like find a cure for his brother to save him, but no, it's not. He's the reason why his brother is sick is because he's forcing him to use his powers. Every time Norris uses his powers, he blanks out and doesn't remember. He doesn't know that he's been used to murder thousands of people, and like, oh, this guy has such good angst potential too, and it's just, oh, I really, really care more about his plot than anybody else. Like, every side character has like a much more interesting plot I would like to see an entire route about. And it really sucks that they just get like, hey, I'm walking and here's my establishment of my plot. Just when you get into it, taken away and we go back to the boring guy. And here we go, an example of a scene where it's like, well, I was kidnapped, but I wasn't treated just as bad as I expected. It's not like I'm allowed to have any real freedom or allowed to go home or like I'm constantly being threatened the fact I'd be killed if I don't live up to all their expectations for me as a princess, and I'm only here as a hostage so they can destroy my entire planet and kidnap me. But, you know, I mean, they didn't sexually assault me, so, I mean, all they're comparatively okay kidnapper. Just imagine so many chapters of this being literally the only consolation to this man being completely horrible to you and no foreshadowing whatsoever of him having any redeeming traits, and yeah. This was just big mood. The very few rare times where she actually mentions like everything that happened in chapter 1 that she left behind, I'm just like, yeah, I also miss Smeagol. I was much more interested in that plot too. I'd like to go back to it, please. God damn it, Smeagol, why are you the best? I was genuinely confused confused when it mentioned female Gawot, because there was no mention whatsoever. The only time you ever see them, the lizard aliens for Gawot, you only ever see them, they're all called male. The only model you have for them is male. There's 2 models for male ones, actually, which actually got me totally thinking of a totally different world building going on there. And then this is the one single textbook that mentioned that female Gawot do actually exist. Up until that point, I was genuinely thinking, are they like a one-gender race, or like an asexually reproducing race, and they just have these 2, like, was this supposed to be like an alien species where like subs and doms are a thing? Because that's actually genuinely more biologically accurate than applying it to human beings. There are actually genuine species in biology where there are 2 different types of biologically distinct males who, from human perspective, we could categorize as like top and bottom and subs and doms or whatever. It's like there is like a category of male which is small and svelte and has like more pretty plumage. Because it happens in birds, I think it's called fader males or something like that, which is ironic because the phaser is the name of their thing. But basically they have three genders. 2 of them are male, as in they have the same reproductive organs, but they're biologically completely different. They have like different sets of hormones, different tertiary characteristics, physical characteristics. Like one of them is like half the size of the other. They're like small and svelte, and they have like totally different plumage colours. And the other one is like big and huge. And also like one of them is bisexual. That's what scientists theorise it's about. There's a very distinct looking males and females, and then you have in the middle secondary type of male which looks androgynous to both genders and will mate with both genders. So it's kind of like a situation where like three-way polyamory is just normal for that species. They'll normally nest in groups of 3, and that's really interesting to think about. It's always my pet peeve when it's like, oh, it's an alien species and their gender roles are exactly the same as humans, or like even more exaggerated, that biologically every man is super tall and every woman is super short or whatever. Because even just looking in the other animals aside from humans that live on our planet, you can find such a variety of like totally unexpected like reverse gender norms, things that totally defy it. Like, I guess we've got like 3 gender norms, like mushrooms which don't even have gender, you have like thousands of different chromosomal combinations, and like it's wild. So yeah, I was initially under the mistaken perception that that's what was going on, because they did make a point of pointing out how Eok, the really nice and lovely lizard man I really want to date, has been pointing out how he's like a grunt class, which is like an entirely separate, like innate class within their species, and he's treated with prejudice because he's like innately smaller and more svelte and stuff like that. I did generally just think, oh, is that just how their species works? Like they don't have like male and female, they just have like, you're born in the worker class, you're born in the fighter class. It's like bees, I guess, bee lizards. Like, I don't know, I was probably giving too much credit and going into more creative ideas on what they were really going for, which is just, we couldn't be bothered to draw 2 models for a female one because there's no important main female characters of this species in the plot. But still, I'm curious to know what they look like. Oh, this is the interesting bit. This is the only time this particular interface device is ever used in the game. And I do find it interesting how they seem to have like a bunch of different like plugins and stuff that are like barely ever used, like for one scene or something. You get a nice rotating radial menu, and this is the only time you have a choice to like pick anyone except Jaemis in the entire plot. It's who you give your Macoette to, because that's what this is. This is my favourite scene in the entire game, is the protagonist just being welcomed to join this indigenous celebration of the lizard people, which is just really sweet and kind. It goes into loads of detail describing how wonderful and great it is, and how everyone here is treating her like with equality, unlike all the shitty general people and like the overlord guy who have just been awful to her. It just hit me really hard because it's been so many chapters of her like suffering, being kidnapped, and her only consolation being, I guess they didn't kidnap me as bad as other people. And then she just has a genuinely nice day at a lovely festival, joining in the dances and being welcome to join in with the custom of giving a Macoette, which is a really interesting idea. It's like sort of like a Valentine, but also sort of not. It's like a unique thing to their culture. It's like during this festival, everyone starts off with one Macoette on their arm. You put it on your right arm to indicate this is your Macoette. It's like a little bracelet with a fancy symbol on it, and then by the end of the day, whoever collects the most on their left arm is considered like the most important and respected person in the festival. It's like you can give them to either people you love or just people you respect and cherish. It shows like many people would give it to the generals because it's like, oh, you're my boss, I need to like suck up to you a bit, here, have my Macoette and stuff. But then in this situation, you can choose to give it to whichever the characters you like which one you have more friendship or like romantic tension with. It's the only point where you're allowed to outright express that you would prefer one of the side characters to our shitty main love interest. It doesn't go anywhere there, it's not a route selection, you only just get some minor dialogue changes later on with whoever you picked. You seem to have the most changes if you pick Eok, because Eok is the biggest, most important guy in the plot. It was neat and I liked it, and I liked how the plot changed later on to show how I really, really, really valued and loved Eok. Like, just wish I'd have a choice to actually be with him. Of course Eeyore gets my Macawet. Of course. I was like, at this point I was like, as soon as they introduced the plot point of the Macawet, I was like, I am going to fucking riot if I'm not allowed to give Eeyore my Macawet. Fucking hell. And I was like, thank you. I know this isn't going to go anywhere. I'm not allowed to actually date him, but thank you. One small bit of consolation in this terrible, terrible time. So the only consolation I like about the boring love interest is at least he's got good world building for how his weird alien species works. No, they have even cooler world building for Eeyore. Like, he for one, he looks like a goddamn alien. For two, he's also got really cool world building. I even found this was like the cutest thing in the entire world. His species, instead of blushing, the area around the horns on their head turns red and puffs up. And like that reminded me of there's like a species of salmon where their back puffs up and turns red when they're in love, and like I thought that was a really, really cute little bit of world building. And also just looks adorable. I love him. He's sweet. He's cute. I love him. He's good. Look at his lovely little face. I could gush for hours about Eeyore. Aye, friend. Look at his. I just screamed at this because that's my best favourite of all of his expressions. Just look how pure and lovely he is right there. I love him. I'm glad even if they don't allow you to date him, you're at least allowed to end the game with like, he's my best friend, and like say a good goodbye to him, give him a big old hug, and like have nice little moments, I guess, where you can give him your buddy Valentine instead of a horrible, terrible man who doesn't deserve it. Oh, this is just me pointing out how stupid the MC can be sometimes. There is a bit of a case of like plot points being dragged out way too long because like a conclusion which is blatantly obvious is like, I generally thought the protagonist would have realised this like from the moment she first landed on the planet. Like, it took her this long until like almost the end of the Fantasy Arabia arc to realise, oh hey, I think that guy might be an evil overlord who's actually oppressing the love interest and all these other guys. I mean, he might have taken over from Force. This might not be their home planet. Despite the fact that he looks blatantly different, and he was first introduced like abusing and whipping the love interest. It's like, you know these facts. Did you just assume he was a regular type of bad boss in an office who just has more violent tendencies? I don't know. Also, you went to a whole ass native indigenous festival. You didn't at any point think like, oh, maybe these guys might be the native species of the planet. Come on, man. This plot twist hit me hard because I genuinely didn't even think it was a plot twist. I just laughed my arse off like, how is this a reveal? Oh yeah, here's a fake out where it makes you think maybe Veritas, who's the evil overlord guy, might have a sympathetic motive. Maybe he might be trying to cure his brother. No, it's later and it's revealed, no. He's the one who caused his brother to be sick because he's overusing his power to destroy planets against his will, and like he's wiping his memory every time so he doesn't know about it. It's like, it's all fucked up. I did like how they throw it like, the whole point of the plot's like, oh, this horrible abusive man actually has a sympathetic reason, he's actually good in the end. But then I like how they threw like, this other horrible abusive man does not actually have a sympathetic reason for why he's doing it. He is actually genuinely an awful villain. And I think that worked well to like, at least finally give us a reason to actually give a shit about Jaemis in the end, because like, yeah, there is a genuinely worse man as a point of comparison. Oh, here is the really fucking upsetting and like hit me really hard, and for a second I thought the plot was going to go in any kind of dramatic place. Right at the very end of the big long-ass Fantasy Arabia arc is when they actually introduce the rebellion even existing and reveal that all the side characters you met so far are part of the rebellion. And the way it's done is like, it's weird because they're presented initially as villains, and it's like, oh no, they're a rebellion, I should go and tell Jaemis and stuff, and like, because oh no, the rebellion must be bad, even though the protagonist in the previous chapter was like, oh, I think actually the guy might be an evil overlord who's taken over his planet. So like, the people who were trying to stop that, like, her mind immediately jumped to them being villains seemed totally ridiculous. Her mind jumps, oh, they've all been betraying me all along, and they're all secretly evil, they all hate me. And this chapter plays a really big fake out of making you think it's actually genuinely true. That's what the next one is. Yeah, here you have, like, Eeyore going from like being a sweet, kind boy who you love to, oh no, maybe he's actually a villain, maybe he's actually going to try and kill me. He's like, oh, I don't care about you anymore, I only care about the rebellion, I'm going to murder you to keep a secret because of the rebellion, because for some reason you want to go and tell everyone about the rebellion rather than join our side. And it's a bit odd, it seems like a bit of a forced conflict, to be honest. But then, immediately in the very next chapter, they reveal actually it was Lana who was the one who wanted you killed to cover up the secret, and Eeyore actually is still on your side, and he is genuinely nice. The only thing is, like, he did have a fake persona, which, like, in the first few chapters, he talks in, like, stereotypical caveman voice, to put it that way. He's saying, oh, me just grunt, me protect you, princess, etc., etc. It's a little bit uncomfortable in that terms of like that stereotype and all, but I think they're going for caveman rather than racial stereotype. Just in the context that he is one of the indigenous people of the planet, it's a bit like, you could have done that a bit better. Like, you could have portrayed him faking being all stupid in a different way, I guess, but either way, it's been resolved now, and he, like, oh, by the way, my actual voice is I just talk, like, completely eloquently, and I was faking it the entire time. And that, combined with all of this, makes you think, like, oh, he was secretly a villain the entire time. Oh, he's this malicious, smart guy who was planning to kill us the entire time. But no, it's just a fake out. This one chapter just had to have a really climactic, dramatic ending. And immediately in the next chapter, it's like, oh, by the way, Eeyore is actually the nice guy of the rebellion. Billis is also the nice guy of the rebellion. Lana is, like, a morally complex, morally grey person who was like, I might have to kill you to save our secret, but also I'm doing this all for the sake of saving the planet, and it is just genuinely exactly what you would expect. The rebellion is good, and saving the planet from the bad guy is good. And it's just like, why was this even in question? Why did we force this contrived situation where you had to have a conflict with him? It's a bit of a shame. You know what's also a shame? This is the last chapter that no one else ever appears unless you make specific choices in the ending. He gets no resolution whatsoever to his plot. He never finds out that his brother is evil. He never, like, gets to stand up to him or anything unless you make very specific choices in the very last chapter of the plot. I will get to that when we get there. So yeah, this made me feel feelings I felt genuinely between. I was like, oh god, no. All the characters that I liked more. I was genuinely worried it was going to be like, oh, the way they get you to like Jaemis is to say, like, all these other likable characters are actually awful and you are bad for liking them. But I'm glad it didn't go that way. It was just a weird fake out. Oh, and this is the out of nowhere moment where Jaemis suddenly starts, he doesn't even act nicer to you. He just suddenly goes, I'm going to risk my life and take your punishment. You were going to be sentenced to death for, like, being blamed for the rebellion's actions. Like, that's the whole thing. Lana blames you for the rebellion's actions and tries to get you sentenced to death. But it's like later on, it's like, oh, she had a reason and etc. And she's more morally grey and blah blah blah. But at the time, you think Eeyore is the one doing this too. It's all like 5 levels of fake out. But it's basically a contrived circumstance that leads to, like, Jaemis doing the first and only nice thing he does to you for, like, until the very very end of the game. He's like, oh, they're sentencing to death. Well, I've got regenerative powers. I'll volunteer to take your punishment instead, and I'll let them beat me almost to death because I'll come back from it. And he's like, and it's like a big dramatic scene of, like, him, like, going like, don't look away, don't you dare stop looking at the consequences of your actions, looking at how, like, he's an arsehole even while he's saving you. He's like, don't you dare, like, this is all your fault. I'm punishing you for what you're doing. You have to watch and see me totally suffer. Blah blah blah. For a scene that's supposed to make you like him, it doesn't work very well because it does generally come out of nowhere. He has not even had the mildest nice moment with you before this. He has had no reason why he would want to be saving you. So the only thing that we've had characters saying, oh, he would totally sacrifice himself to save someone, but everything we've seen in the plot completely contradicts it. We've seen him directly kill 2 of his subordinates for, like, 1, being disobedient, and 2, for, like, being too slow to get back to the ship in time. And he's like, oh, we can't be bothered to turn around, we'll delay the journey too much. Let's just leave him to die horribly in the vacuum of space. That was the most fucked up scene. So yeah, this did just seem very artificial, like, oh, I guess we're literally at the exact halfway point of the game. We have to put in some reason to care about the love interest. So he's just going to suddenly out of nowhere go, I've completely changed my mind, I actually do care about you. But then, immediately after this chapter, after he's sacrificed himself, even during him sacrificing himself, he's still a complete fucking arsehole to you. And it's only moved up from, like, before I wanted to kill you and repeatedly told you I wanted to kill you, now I just hate you, but I don't want to kill you. It's really like the slowest of slow burns. It's not even a slow burn romance, it's like a slow burn getting to being basic friends, and then a very fast burn romance. The next arc, well, the next one chapter. Because of all the stuff going on with you being blamed for the rebellion, something, now they're pushing forward the invasion of Earth. They're taking you back to Earth as a hostage to try and complete their invasion plan. Irka's like, yeah, of course I'll help you escape when we get there, and then he does. The end. Immediately we backtrack. Eeyore is actually nice. He genuinely cares about you. He genuinely appreciates. His feelings were genuine about giving the macoettes during the festival. Like it's canonical that Eeyore does have a crush on you. You're just never allowed to actually reciprocate, which really fucking sucks. But yeah, immediately, like, no, he was not in on the big plan. He is part of the rebellion, but he's a good guy who wants to save the country, and, like, he didn't want you to be killed as part of that plan, etc., etc. He's now going to try and help save you to escape back to Earth, and then he does, and it's really awesome and badass. He, like, risks his entire life for you, like, 5 times in a row, and really proves that, like, the entire fucking fake out was totally fake. And it really was just like, here, this chapter, we're going to tell you every other character except Jaemis is bad to try and make Jaemis look a bit better, and it didn't even succeed. It's kind of funny in retrospect. Yeah, just like that, my sympathy returns in full. They have a main character saying all the same stuff the player is feeling, and it's just like, was this even intended to make you like Jaemis at all? Because even the main character doesn't like Jaemis at all. Even the main character's like, the only reason I'm continuing this plot is because I care about Eeyore. This is really annoying because he does just completely continue acting like an arsehole, but the dialogue has the main character now thinking, oh, I think he must be gentle deep down. It's really fucking weird. So just feel like the writers are like trying so hard to compensate, and they just did not really have it. Like, this is her, in context, this is her being, oh, he's being so gentle while applying, like, drug shots to my arm. He's not trying to purposefully hurt me. It is, like, the bare minimum of, like, he understands that humans bruise easily now, and he's not going to try and do it, as opposed to before where he would just casually, like, pick you up by the arm and swing you around. Like, he didn't outright abuse you, like, purposefully hurt you, but he just didn't give a shit if you got hurt and died. And now he's like, oh, I guess I'll protect you. But at the same time, he's saying outright that, oh, I only want to protect you because you're a bargaining chip, because he still thinks you're the human princess. He's like, the only reason I protect you, the only reason you got to stay alive is because when you get back to Earth, we're going to, like, literally, like, ransom you off and, like, threaten to kill you right there and then if they don't, like, surrender their life of their planet and stuff like that. But the game is going out of its way to say he's nice when he's not actually doing anything nice at all, and it's really weird. Everyone gets back to Earth. Eeyore does indeed save you. Jaemis doesn't listen to any sort of reason or want to team up with you despite every bit of logic, despite the fact he is now here 10,000 miles away from his abuser, and you're presenting him with a human army of soldiers who could easily help him fight and take back his planet. He's still like, no, I'm so determined to murder you. But with Eeyore's help, you escape from him. You get back to everyone you left behind from the superhero plot, and also these morally ambiguous government guys who apparently cool mad scientist brother has started working with off-screen. He's got like a lucrative military contract because it's the only way to get the money necessary to like send out space probes to try and find where you are to save you. And you finally reunite. It's really awesome. And then you all beat up and kidnap Jaemis, and like you put him in solitary confinement, and like you once again try and ask him to team up with you to defeat the real villain guy, but he's like, no, I don't see any point in no, I'm still want to try and kill you. So then you once again ask him to do all that, while you've also brought out this magical superhero who's never mentioned before, who has the power to make binding contracts of promises so someone has to do something. And eventually after that's happened and he's been sort of pushed into it, only then does he go, actually, yeah, maybe I do believe that you could actually defeat the bad guy and save my planet and all my people, and I might actually want to be redeemed now. So then he starts a training arc of you and him and Eeyore and all these military ridiculous guys and your brother are all going to work together to get really strong in like the last 3 months remaining before the evil boss man comes for the second invasion. We're going to all get super pumped to be able to fight him off. And would you believe all of these plot things are happening in the space of one fucking chapter? Would you believe that all of them now get completely dropped? No, we do not get to actually see this training arc whatsoever. And we're finally back to Earth, and we're finally back to Smeagol. I love you and I miss you, Smeagol. Sadly, I have to say, from this point onwards, Smeagol becomes a much less likeable character. And it really sucks. It's like, almost all the characterization he gets in the first chapter is kind of gone, and he just becomes nothing but like, I guess like the stereotype of like the overprotective dad who brings a shotgun and like, oh, don't stay away from my baby, you need to prove yourself to me. Like, you barely ever get any scenes whatsoever of Smeagol just actually expressing his personality at all, his happy-go-lucky, fun-loving, silly personality from the first chapter. Instead, he's just constantly angry and constantly being like, I hate Jaemis, you shouldn't date Jaemis, how dare you date Jaemis, and mistaking the most basic of things for like, oh, Jaemis must be fucking you behind the scenes and stuff like that, and getting really pissed off. It's so pointless, and it just, again, it feels like they're trying to find a way, an excuse to make you like Jaemis by going, oh, here's our straw man character who hates Jaemis unreasonably for fake reasons, and like somehow that should make you stop hating Jaemis for real reasons. And also like, no, I'm not against the side of Smeagol. Like, there's genuine reasons to not want me to date Jaemis. He is genuinely right to be concerned. He's just getting the wrong reasons to be concerned about. And if we explain to him what actually happens, he would probably be concerned in a totally different way. I miss Smeagol so much. I missed the good plot. Also, just a random line I liked, and also to point out that Kane has barely any screen time in the entire game, and it's very strange because the game tries to give him like a big story arc and make him very important to the story later on. But compared to Smeagol, he gets barely any screen time after you get returned to Earth. He's just like totally out of commission for multiple chapters. He's doing missions behind the scenes, and it is very strange that in the end he's the one who has the big plot thing rather than Smeagol. The very plot point is the reason you get into a buddy comedy scene with Jaemis and Eeyore having to live in your house and be all funny and all that is, there's out of nowhere there's a superhero who has the power to make binding oaths, which means no one can break them unless they die, and it's like, I can definitely guarantee that Jaemis will not betray you and will not go back to the evil guy and work for him because I'm making him sign a binding oath that he'll die if he tries. And then that's the justification for why you're allowed to just keep these guys who used to be your enemies and just hang out with them in your house and have funny scenes of like going to the mall and stuff. To be fair, it was handled okay compared to like other contrived plot points. Like it is at least set up as superheroes, but it's been so long since there were superheroes that it sort of feels like it does come out of nowhere anyway. I do kind of feel like maybe the only reason that they did set up them being superheroes is so that they could have this plot point later. Also, just the main character having some kind of power. Also, this could have worked all the same if it was like fantasy or anything like that. Or if it was like, oh, some people on Earth are part alien, I don't know, link it back into the plot we actually have. Or go into the sci-fi, say like there's been sci-fi technology invented which gives people powers. I don't know. Now let's take a break from all of that. Pretty much nothing happens for the next 5 chapters except just wholesome, happy friendship time. Because you've convinced the morally ambiguous government guys that Jaemis is now completely 100% safe because of the magic oath thing, now him and Eok just come and live in your house. And you have funny time and slice of life. And again, you'd think this is where they start making you actually like him and actually get to know him. No, they don't. Again, it's more about Eok. All of Eok's scenes are actually bonding with you, actually having a fun time, actually being excited to see all this cool new stuff on Earth. All of Jaemis' scenes are just him complaining that Earth sucks ass and ruining your house with mouldy sofa power. But at least you can embarrass him at an arcade photo game. Another moment of the MC's characterization being weirdly inconsistent between chapters. First introduction to her, to the idea where she's raising the idea of like, oh, let's get some casual clothes for Jaemis and Eok. First thing she says is, oh, if Jaemis wearing a dress, that'd be cute and kind of adorable actually, but oh, he wouldn't fit in one because he's so buff. A couple chapters later, once they actually get to the mall and start shopping, Jaemis and Eok actually say, oh, let's get this dress, because in their culture they have no stigma whatsoever against men wearing dresses, which is, again, an interesting bit of cultural stuff. But then the MC totally changed their mind. It's like, oh, you know, men wearing dresses is actually socially frowned upon in our country, and I'm explaining to you why this would be negative towards. Like, I did at least appreciate that she didn't go and say like, oh, I think it's gross, you shouldn't do that, oh, I'm prejudiced or anything. It was like, it's totally okay, and I'm happy. It would be bad of me to tell you not to wear something that makes you happy, but it might be better for us to buy this and you only wear it in the privacy of your own house, because we're kind of trying to make you masquerade as normal humans, and it might be best to avoid doing any gender non-conforming behaviours because of that. Which I do kind of dislike how it's a contrived plot explanation for why the characters are not allowed to be gender conforming, but it makes sense as like a way to avoid this plot point, to have the MC be supportive of them, but also we're not actually going to show anyone in dresses, which is a shame. But it makes sense in the context of the story. I screen capped this because this is just encapsulation of the entire route and my feelings about this character. Even this late in the story, MC has no appeal whatsoever to him. It takes like 5 different scenes of him randomly showing up naked in front of her before she like gets her first moment of, oh, I actually might be attracted to him in even the slightest of ways. And even then it's just like a purely physical attraction of like, I still hate him, but at least he's hot. And it stays that way for so long before it actually gets to any kind of romance scenes. Also, I screen capped this because this particular scene made me really annoyed that the route is focusing on Jaemis and not Eok, because I mean, it started off as being an interesting scene of like introducing Eok to like what the concept of an indoor bath is. I thought, oh, that'd be really adorable actually. That'd be adorable, like a platonic kind of scene. You could introduce him like, how does a bath work, and like how an adorable scene like washing his little lizard head or something. Here's how to scrub your scales, and you like pop a little sponge on his head and pat him on the head, and he's like, oh, I'm adorable and all that. Like, can you imagine how much he would love like scented shampoos and like little rubber duckies and all these things, and like introducing him, like him having a wonderful time. Instead, no. 5 seconds of Eok establishing we're going to be talking about baths. Instead, we go over to Jaemis, who fucking hates baths. He's like, oh, this is nowhere near as luxurious as my big open bath in my big fancy mansion. Ooh. Oh, this human technology sucks. And then he overflows the bath and floods your entire house and refuses to turn it off even when you're telling him he's flooding your entire house. He's like, no, I was just starting to get used to your terrible inferior baths. Now don't tell me to get out of it now. Like, I'm literally just telling you to turn off a tap. No, I'm not even going to let you go near it. Even when you point at you drag him over and show him directly that he's ruined the entire house, he's making your sofa gather mold. He's like, I'm not even going to help clean up the mess I made. Like, they're really doing literally nothing to endear to his character. Even when he's been forcibly made harmless to you and can't kill you, and you're stuck like having a domestic comedy life with him, he's still not endearing anyone. He's still a complete arsehole at every possible opportunity. Again, really confused why a lot of the fierce choices do not seem fierce at all. Here it's just like, how is it not being more kind to tell him he looks cute? Like I guess you definitely pass. Sounds like a passive-aggressive compliment. Also, he looks so cute, I squeal. Even in this boring human form, he still looks less boring than the boring human main love interest. Gah! And this also makes me realise how fucked up and not logical it is that Eok's upcoming route is literally him. I've checked and it does say he is human in this route. He never becomes a dragon or anything. Even though it's a medieval magical fantasy situation where you could make him become a dragon. And it could just be like, you know who won the vote for character we most want to have a route? This sci-fi lizard alien. Okay, I've heard what you want. Human man in medieval fantasy land. Just how could anyone do that? I guess this writer just has a type and it's very human men. This fucking annoys me so much. It's like the first half of the game was Jaemis being an arsehole to you and the main character being like, he's being an arsehole to me and I hate him. Then, after the halfway point, he still continues being an arsehole, but the main character is now saying, oh, I'm sure I know he's good deep down, based on the fact he saved my life and did absolutely nothing after that ever again, and continues to neg the shit out of me and literally ruin my house with sofa mold. And this bit is just so inconsistent. Like, again, everyone insisting, like, oh, him sacrificing himself to save your life, that's totally normal, as if we didn't introduce him with 2 scenes of him murdering his own comrades on screen. And also multiple chapters of him outright saying he'd kill you if you stopped being useful. From everything I've seen of him up until now, I doubt he'd let me die. No, he'd literally cause you to die with his own bare hands. God. Like if you wanted to, change it, you should have gone back and changed the first 3 chapters to add a bit more foreshadowing of him being nice and to make it seem like it's just empty threats he was making, but no, he's just an arsehole. There was no evidence whatsoever of him not being an arsehole. There is continuing to be no evidence whatsoever of him not being an arsehole until the last 3 chapters of the game. This line made me extra sad that Eok's planned route is going to be him being human all the time. He seems happier like this. I'm happier he is like this too. Even more of me wishing we could focus on Eok during this buddy hangout moment. Like, he only really gets focused when it's him and Jaemis having friendship, enemies to friendship moments and stuff. They start out being enemies here and be like, oh Eok, you betrayed me to try and stop the evil overlord guy who physically abuses me. But you betrayed me, you didn't hold up your code of honor even if you were doing the objectively good thing to save both me and my sister and the entire world. It's very forced. And again makes Jaemis look like a complete arsehole who is just continuing to be an arsehole for no fucking reason. Anyway, I wish we could have had an entire scene or even a mini game about helping Eok make lovely sandwiches. I'd much prefer that to just 10,000 repeatings of the same basic anime cliche of, oh, I walked it on Jaemis naked. Oh, Jaemis walked it on me naked. Oh, piss fetish moment has occurred. Oh, this made me laugh because they literally have a plot point that Jaemis flexes so hard that his shirt and his pants rip off. But it's the way they phrase it. I'm like, yes, you are a stupid little fart boy, aren't you, Jaemis? Also, this again made it seem like the superhero stuff has been completely forgotten and doesn't play a part in the story, because they make a point of saying, oh, Jaemis is so unreasonably buff and tall that no clothes would fit him, but at the same time, you, the protagonist, are a tailor specifically for super suits, for superheroes. Like, you would think in a world where superheroes are normal, people being especially buff and tall would also be, normal. Like, are you telling me every single superhero in this world just defies the norms and is not a Superman Dorito? He's not even drawn particularly extra large compared to everyone. He's muscular, but he's not, so muscular that no plus-size clothes would fit him. Oh, here we are, Chapter 21. In the game's own words, the first time I had a civilized conversation with Jaemis, who has been nothing but a stubborn, oversized brat all this time. Yeah. There's slow burn, and then we just literally didn't write any of it until the last 5 seconds and remembered we had to put some love in here. And even this isn't even love, this is just, with 7 chapters to go, we've gone to the point of him being basically neutral to us. He's still teasing and kind of a dick, but he's at least a reasonable level of jokey friendship, I guess, compared to anything else. And it's so late in the game. And it takes until the last 3 chapters for that to progress in any way to love. Oh, this scene made me feel so fucking uncomfortable, and I hate it. This is the epitome of how they decide to only show that love is happening by making you physically attracted to him and neither of you having any romance whatsoever. Here is a scene where you accidentally sexually assault him because of the ways that his alien biology works different to you. It is literally explained in the game's words that fondling someone's ears is the equivalent of grabbing your boobs and squeezing and tweaking your nipples, like, out of nowhere to a stranger. Like, the protagonist is trying to cut his hair and doesn't know that his boner zone is his ears, to put it that way, so it's an incredibly fucking uncomfortable scene of it, like, being played for laughs and being played for sexy, that, like, this guy has essentially been accidentally sexually assaulted, and neither of you were in the wrong. She had no way of knowing this, he had no way of knowing your species worked different either, so he couldn't have warned you. It's just, like, it just overwhelmed me how different my opinion is to, like, whoever wrote this, who would think that this is, like, genuinely a way to progress a romance through, because it's not played as if it's, like, horrible, terrible thing, or, like, a really big moment you regret or anything. It's just, oh, haha, funny embarrassment, ooh, it's giving us some sexual tension, and it's just, I just feel like if this situation genuinely happened, I would just feel really sad for both of them. And also what annoys me is, this moment sets them back from, like, the basic civilized conversation to back to totally distrusting each other for the next few chapters. It's like, you got so close to actually, like, when this scene started, I thought they were going to actually have a romance moment, because, like, oh, it's like an intimate and gentle moment, he's, like, trusting you enough, because, and that's the thing, he was afraid of you having the scissors, because he's like, oh, you're bringing a deadly weapon close to my face, I'd never trust anyone to do that, you could try and kill me, and, like, we know from the start of the story that the protagonist was considering to kill him at one point, and she's like, oh, how can I prove to you that I don't want to kill you anymore? And, like, it was generally kind of sweet, just getting a moment of, like, oh, he's opening up, he's trying to trust you, and, like, and then it's just totally ruined with a stupid sex joke, which is just majorly uncomfortable, and now he doesn't trust you anymore either, and you were also super embarrassed and don't want to talk to him anymore either. And then just 1,000 more chapters of this will they, won't they tension, but it's like 1,000% won't they. It is nothing but won't they. It's hard to really put a clear cut-off point for this, because it's less that the buddy comedy just stops and we start doing the parent detective stuff, and it's more like it just insidiously starts coming in and takes over the plot like a big old tumour. Anyway, we suddenly discover that our parents have a secret room in the back of the house. Our cool science brother spends multiple chapters trying to get the door open. Just imagine throughout all of that really, really bad attempted bonding with Jaemis, is every 5 seconds it just cuts back to Smeagol saying, nope, still can't get the door open. Multiple chapters in a row. Anyway, they finally crack it open, they find that their parents were secret superheroes. Why is that a secret? Did we not already know that? The children are both superheroes. They didn't know their parents had powers too. What is going on? Again, another plot twist I didn't even think was a plot twist. Anyway, you and Smeagol are shocked and appalled about this deception that your parents were doing behind your back before they died mysteriously in that mysterious fire. We also bring up that Smeagol invented some kind of magical formula that can stop superheroes' powers from working, and it's not explained why, but it also works on aliens. I don't get it, but anyway, the morally ambiguous government people fucked up and lost it, and now it's been taken by these evil anti-superhero terrorists who are vaguely referenced in the first chapter of the game and never again until now, and now they're making a big counterattack and doing their big, massive plan to do whatever it was they were planning to do all along, we swear. And your mysterious family secrets that you've got detective eyes out could be the one thing that saves us all. You find that the reason your parents were superheroes in secret is because they were investigating this evil anti-superhero organisation. And the person who killed them must be the secret leader of that evil anti-superhero organisation. It turns out that person is the dad of Kane, the guy who hasn't been in the plot for several chapters. He faked his own death to kill your parents, and now he's back, and he's evil, and he's doing a big thing with some stolen stuff he stole from your brother, and this is all just dumped on you really rapidly fast. And now that is what the plot is about. We have still completely forgotten we were meant to be having a training arc to stop an alien invasion. That's now kinda sorta back. Anyway, there's all angst about these multiple things. Despite so much plot things happening, I probably have the least to say about this section compared to anything else in the game. It was not good. Oh, this I also dislike is how literally every single thing about the status quo set up in the first chapter is totally abandoned. Like, the main character was introduced as someone who doesn't want to be a superhero and wants to use their power in a different way to help the world and to prove that people who have superpowers don't have to use them to fight. You can also use them in, like, service work and jobs and stuff to help people in different ways. Then, that was never mentioned again. We totally didn't talk about superheroes ever again. We haven't talked about her motivations ever again. We haven't gone back and had her do any tailoring ever again. Until this point here where she says, oh, actually the entire time I did want to be a superhero. I was just, like, filled with too much self-doubt, and now I've overcome it somehow from being in that deadly situation with you for months in space. Even though I never mentioned the entire time that I had any of this motivation. You abandoned a genuinely interesting plot, like, you abandoned a genuinely interesting idea that, like, there are ways to use superpowers to help people without it. Like, no, she was just in denial and she really does want to use her superpowers to fight people. And never again is anyone presented as anyone who uses her superpowers for anything other than, like, fighting. And that's it. By the end of the story, she has become a superhero. The end. There was so much set up, I was interested, like, again, like, the anti-super racism and stuff that was in the first chapter, like, again, abandoned completely until, like, the very last chapters, and it's resolved in such a stupid way. It's like, oh, because the supers saved us from the aliens, now anti-human racism is over, and all the supers gain the courage to, like, stand up and say, I'm going to take off my mask, and I'm going to be my real self, and, like, we don't need secret identities anymore, ooh. And it's like, where is the correlation? Just like, how did she decide she's overcome her self-confidence issues and wants to become a superhero? Because she went on a big, scary space adventure with a weird kidnapping man. And how does saving the world from aliens mean that now racism is over? It's just a bit strange. It feels like they had ideas for plot and they kind of felt like, oh, we have to wrap it up somehow. It is solved now. We're not going to explain how. The end. Just like it's not explained how Jaemis suddenly decided he cares about us enough to save our life. But not to be polite to us and not destroy our sofa with more. I'm never going to get over that. And here's when we suddenly go, like, first landed back on Earth, oh, we need to do a training arc to prepare for when the rest of the aliens invade to stop the evil overlord man and fully free the country from fully free the alien planet from all of him and everything they can. Literally by the next chapter, no, we're not going to do a training arc anymore. Instead, we're going to have slice of life funny shenanigans, showing them what movies and sandwiches are, like having a funny scene of trying to catch popcorn in their mouths, and Jaemis, like, honestly, one of the only endearing moments he had was him being like, oh, I can't back down from a challenge, I'm going to be the best at catching popcorn in my mouth, and being oddly, adorably, like, proud of when he actually did. Genuinely the only moment during the entire game before the final chapter where I actually did feel like, oh, he actually might be a nice guy underneath it all. But yeah, we went from that, and now we're abandoning the slice of life funny times, and instead we're to detective arc, where we bring back the parents who have not been mentioned at all since the first chapter, and the mysterious death. Now we're reintroduced to the villain, the secondary villains, the secret organisation which is racist against superheroes and wants to eradicate them all with an anti-superhero virus. Again, not mentioned at all since the first chapter, now they're back. We never actually see them or encounter them until we take them out. We literally only get the final confrontation with them and nothing else, and we only meet like one member of the entire group. All of this just feels like they tried to write 5 different routes in one route and they just left so many things hanging. By the way, Kane's father is the leader of the evil anti-superhero people. He faked his death and killed his wife and secretly hates his son and wants to kill him too. And it's like, this would all be really dramatic if we even knew who the fuck Kane was, or he had any... He actually gets screen time again after you already find out that his dad is the villain. Like, you find out his dad is a villain. The entire detective thing of investigating his dad happens with him not in the picture at all. He doesn't get to be involved in it. You just tell him later, like, oh, by the way, off screen we found out your dad was evil, the end. And then he, like, gets a very rushed, like, angsty arc about it, and, like, I would feel for it if it was happening to any other character who I saw it. And it's just a shame because Kane has like one of the best character designs on the entire route. And it's again so weird because on his own separate route he doesn't have that character design. It's like whenever a character gets their own route they will always look worse than they do in other people's routes. And here we have actually a branching point. It's around here that all your fierce or kind choices that you made for the entire game have stacked up and have determined which version of the ending you'll get. It's actually genuinely rather interesting the game has a full, entirely different end game. It isn't just the ending itself, but like the last 3 chapters leading up to it have loads of different changes in depending on the route. So we'll be going into and covering those separately. And so let's take a brief break to look at some funny outfits. For is that not what the game is truly for? My ego avatar wearing the super suit that you get given as part of the plot. And here's all the outfits I made for him throughout my playthrough. A version of his regular outfit within this game's systems. And then the last one is my redesign of what I think his superhero outfit would look like if he actually designed his own. Basically, like, what would a superhero mad scientist wear, and then also he was a little bit more fruity. And here we have all that in my art style. Hooray! I don't know if I'd draw like a young flashback version of Igor, so it was a cool exercise. Also, I've probably shown this image already, but here is him absolutely despising the plot he has fallen into. We're starting with the kind route because that's what I got on my first playthrough. Regardless of which route you're on, we do finally actually get back to a superhero training arc to stop the upcoming alien invasion, and also to stop the anti-superhero faction which is suddenly part of the plot. In both routes, you grab Kane, who hasn't been part of the plot for ages, you tell him, oh, by the way, off-screen, we had a whole arc of discovering your dad was evil and also alive and killed our parents. and we didn't really call you in to be part of it, I guess. We sort of forgot. You tell him all this, he has, 10,000 years of a mental breakdown in the space of 5 seconds, and I guess now we all have to just go and handle this. The big plot of the evil anti-superhero league is to hijack the Macy's parade to get a big crowd where all of the superheroes are gathered together to do a big display of how proud we are of superheroes. And that will make our big statement. We'll shoot our stolen gadget from Smeagol, which makes the superheroes' powers goes away, and we'll make them all normal, and everyone will lose faith in superheroes, as opposed to thinking someone else took the powers of the superheroes and that's bad because now we don't have superheroes to defend us against the aliens. It's such a bizarre plot. They somehow know that the aliens are coming, and their evil plan is not to team up with the aliens, but just to be like, when the aliens come and the superheroes can't fight off the aliens, all the humanity will see that superheroes actually really suck. And you've had no contingency plan. Okay, if the superheroes can't fight off the aliens, who is going to fight off the aliens? What do you plan to happen when the aliens come? Humanity won't be disillusioned with superheroes. Humanity will be fucking dead and smear on the pavement. It's kind of clear this plot point was only created to be stopped, and the writers just did not think about what happens after that point, or even why or what the motivation would be for it. So the day before their big evil plan happens, you and Jaemis and Eok and Kane, who is now finally back in the plot, and your cool brother Smeagol, who is doing mission support, all team up to kick the arse of these evil anti-superhero people and their evil Macy's parade plan. Depending on the route, this goes completely different. In this route, you succeed. You manage to capture the evil Kane's boss dad. However, the rest of his group is still going to work independently and still do the Macy's parade attack tomorrow. Along the way, you have to break the magic oath that's keeping Jaemis from being able to kill you. In this particular version of the route, it's very dissatisfying and anticlimactic how it happens. So now if both of these things successfully set up to play exactly the same as the other route, everything else can play completely different to the other route. Here we are, Jaemis suddenly 190 bazillion% changes entirely and goes, I realise I was actually really bad the entire time, I wasn't respecting you, I see that you have your own good sides to you, that you stick to your convictions, and you fight for what's right, and you stand up to people no matter what, you have no fear in you. I wasn't valuing that, I was only valuing physical strength and thinking you were weak because of that, and it just flies right the fuck out of nowhere. And what instigated this to happen, and why didn't he realise it earlier? And it does just be since Jaemis has been with you, he's started changing, but why? And why was he not showing any signs of it whatsoever? It's just he's slowly gathering up minuscule amounts of kindness EXP, and once it hits a certain threshold, he just instantly I'm kind now, the end. But what's funny is this scene happens, and then he goes back to being an arsehole again in the next scene. It really is 2 steps forward, 50 steps back. That's how the next time we get to a development point, it'll act like the entire time he's been in that development point. It's not like he goes back and he has to learn again how to be nice. The next time we get into the full love interest, it acts like he's been nice the entire time. It's very strange. I do wonder if maybe the chapters were written out of order or something, or I don't know, or maybe depending what choices you make, things will go different, but I don't know, because I was trying to make all the kind choices the entire time. It didn't make him any less of an arsehole. Here we are finally explaining what the fuck this anti-super terrorist organisation is, literally right before we go to stop them. One plot I did generally like, there's a sort of a subplot about a superhero informant who's kind of a grumpy guy called Mr. Invisible, which is kind of an incredibly lame superhero name. It's a shame because some of the other superheroes have really cool names, Kane's superhero name is Voltage, which is really cool. But yeah, you do a classic roughing up and interrogating an informant scene, and then what I found really interesting is that Eok actually calls you out on it and is why were you like that? Haven't you seen from me and my plotline, some people are in situations where they're forced to do bad things, but they are good deep down and they're just being abused by someone, and also just pointing out in the end, the thing that you get, the thing you say to make the informant actually fess up to you is to say we can do this, we can get you away with this, we can get you back to a normal life, and you won't have to do bad things anymore. And that's what makes him go, okay, I'm on your side now. And then here Eok is calling out on her, and she never intended to follow up on that promise. She just thought, he is full on evil, I don't care, despite the fact he was clearly saying that he didn't want to be evil and he's forced into this against his will. I was MC has been really horrid here. This is so weirdly out of character. And then I was I'm glad that it happened for a purpose, and the purpose was the game to call it out and to give an actual genuine development arc for the MC, where she learns her binary concept of good and evil is actually really shit, and anyone has the potential in them to become just as good and wonderful as our best boy Eok. And again, every important plot event is initiated by Eok instead of Jaemis. Jaemis basically didn't even need to exist. He only exists to be the love interest. Even his role of being someone who was wronged by the evil overlord and proves how evil it is, like, Eok also has that. 10,000 reasons why we're all on Team Eok. And I really love the writing in the scene specifically. Your lie can always turn into the truth, Eok, but do not give him false hope. When your hope is crushed, you're left with nothing else. I love the pained smile, and it's like, instantly makes you realise, like, hey, this guy might have been a bit of a grumpy dick, but like, he's in the same position as Eok, and we helped Eok, and it's like, just because this guy is less polite doesn't mean he's less abused. And again, Eok is helping Jaemis' plotline happen more than Jaemis himself is. Like, Jaemis is not being consistently nice, or in any way showing he's developing. He, like, it said, like, 5 minutes before this scene, he did finally have, like, the first sign of nice development, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, they are really, like, even in the moments where, like, now we're proving Jaemis actually changed, we have to have Eok come in and, like, metaphorically prove that Jaemis has changed through an entirely separate plotline which didn't involve Jaemis at all. Eok is the thread holding this plot together. Second, mildly endearing point of Jaemis having, like, any kind of interesting character traits whatsoever behind being an arsehole. They do try and give him, like, an endearing running joke of him getting lost easily, but I feel like it's so cliche and not very well done, it doesn't actually endear you at all. It is generally endearing. He's all like, oh, I don't trust anything, I don't like anything on this human planet, all these human things you're making me do, they're terrible, I'm not going to take a bath correctly, I'm not going to care about fighting black mold in your sofa. I'm not going to respect your privacy. I'm going to walk around naked all the time. And then, like, the one thing he acts like, oh, humans actually did invent a really good thing, is hot chocolate. And he gets endearingly obsessed with hot chocolate. And, like, it's genuinely adorable how he like, the protagonist is like, oh, I'm so proud of you. You learned how to make it yourself. And he's like, I could not operate the heating device. It wouldn't warm the liquid. It's so sweet. He was so proud to boast to us, and he managed to succeed at hot chocolate. And he's like, well, actually, I failed at the last step, but I almost got there. And then you're like, Pat, I'm genuinely proud at you when you help him and you teach him. And it's like, if we could have more bonding moments like this, it would have been so much. Like, I can't believe how much they wasted the funny roommates arc. There are so few scenes like this, and it seems like these are the most basic, easy ways to endear to this guy in that kind of scenario. But instead, Eok gets all of those, and he just gets like, I don't respect your not making me walk around naked and ruin your baths. And it's generally just the only bonding they get is he has taken his top off, and like, well, he's still a fuckhead, but at least he's got abs. So I support more hot jockey scenes. Oh yeah, and here's again, like, Eok gave me the realization I need to progress the plot of Jaemis. It would not have happened without Eok. Like, Eok is your fucking agony ant in your corner resolving all your plots. And the way it's written is like, I like how in here you have the choice to say, I do or don't forgive you. It's like, I forgive you and I understand that you were forced into doing this, versus, I don't forgive you even if you were forced, what you did was really traumatic, but I don't have to forgive you to accept that you're also a victim too. And like, I think both choices work really well, and it's good that they did give you a choice. And then I'm relieved that the writers avoided like the problematic trope of like, oh well, he's justified in everything he did. It's like, no, both him and you don't think he was justified in what he did. He's like, I'm so regretful. I let myself be used to do all these atrocities. I didn't stand up to him earlier. I didn't believe I could stand up to him. I never found the courage until I met you. And like, now I realize like all of the things I thought about you were like, oh, you just being like combative and like sassy and not obeying my orders, were actually you being braver than I ever was and standing up to injustice. And like, this really, really good, well-written scene that has come out of nowhere. Oh, and here's Kane's evil dad, who's like just completely the most evil. Like, that's one thing I don't like, is like the actual villains in the game are completely one note and like no real reason why they're doing what they're doing, and like they just exist to be like, oh, Jaemis isn't as bad by comparison. Like, we have no reason whatsoever why Benjamin like wants to kill all supers, and why he hated his own wife and son and murdered him. Like, why did you even marry her and have a kid in the first place then? And like, yeah, he's just an arsehole, but I do honestly respect it's so infrequent to find a game which presents abusive dads as just arseholes, and it's totally okay to cut them out of your life and leave. Because both him and the evil overlord guy are both presented as abusive dad figures. The evil overlord guy is like more metaphorical, as in like, Jaemis was kidnapped by him when he was a kid, and like he never had parents, but this was like the closest thing he had, and he was raised to be a soldier and stuff like that. But like, Benjamin is literally just an abusive biological father. I like also it's not like only adoptive fathers are evil or anything. It's just his two flavors of the same exact personality of an evil dad, and they're going to work together and be our combined final villain for the plot, and we're going to beat the shit out of him, and it's going to be very cathartic. Oh, also, here's a resolution to Jaemis, like, underestimating his sister, like, even when she was revealed to secretly be the rebellion leader and to be, like, doing all this cool stuff behind the scenes, he was still like, oh, I need to protect her, and, like, he would, like, underestimate her, oh, she's not so smart, oh, she's not so strong, oh, she needs the power of me and the brother to protect her, like, and then even when it's revealed that, like, behind the scenes she was doing all stuff, all he could see is, like, oh, she betrayed me. She was doing this behind the scenes. What? She's manipulated by someone else. It's a good point where the protagonist helps him realise that, yes, she was doing all that on purpose of her own choice. She is generally a badass, and also she was correct and you were wrong. And he admits it. And it's like, again, him, like, it does feel like sometimes some of the scenes are out of order because this happens after his scene when he's saying, oh, I understand now how physical strength is and everything, and you're powerful because of your personality. And then he's like, now I need you to convince me that Lana is also powerful despite not having physical strength. I do kind of feel like maybe if they'd taken all these, like, romantic scenes and, like, character progress scenes and maybe, like, scattered them more throughout the overall runtime and put them in a different order, it might have worked a bit better. But for what it is, the last few chapters of the game are, like, generally, like, it cranks up into high gear and becomes genuinely actually good. And it answers all the troubles you had, and he calls himself out on every single bad thing he's ever done and, like, definitively proves that he's over it. It's so fast and it does come out of nowhere. I just really wish they'd led up to it a bit more. Oh, also, here's a shot of Kane's incredibly amazing design in this route. And also, Eok finally gets a super suit, which I love. He looks really cool. Why could I not date either of these guys? Oh, this was also a weird error I started noticing only in the last few chapters. I think it might be because there is a branching point where you get either the naughty or nice endings. There were quite a few moments where characters would repeat the same thing over and over again. Here, before we planned to go into the building, Smeagol briefs us on, like, oh, those two guys, one of them is a super that we know who's vapor who will turn the air toxic, and the second one we don't know what their power is because it's an unknown person. Then, once we walk in and we start doing the plan, and we're right outside the door, then Jaemis and Egon notice, oh, who's that guy? There's some guy standing next to the guy. That's Vapor. He can turn the air toxic and poison us all. Who's that other guy next to him? I don't know who that is. That's an unknown person with other superpowers. But you were told this 5 seconds ago. This point really annoyed me, actually, because the first route I played was the nice route, and in the nice route, this moment is really, really disappointing. Like, you got this big dramatic scene of Jaemis coming in with a bloody persona cut out, and he's like, oh, I'm going to break my oath to you. It was like the only way that the oath could be broken without him dying is if the oath maker, which is you, decides that you want to do it. So it's like, in this extreme moment of danger, it's like you're proving that you trust him to, like, oh, I'll break the oath, like, you'll be allowed to kill me again if you want to, but I know you won't because I trust you. And, like, in the other route, this plays out much better. It's like, it's genuinely a life or death situation where, like, you would die from falling off a building if he hadn't have broken the oath and been able to save you, because it's like, he's not allowed to use his powers until he breaks the oath, and stuff like that. Like, I forgot to mention, the last few chapters, the whole buddy comedy thing, like, he hasn't been able to use his alien superpowers, which, again, is another plot point I find is really stupid, is, for some reason, all of the things that block superhero powers also work in blocking alien powers. There's no explanation given, it's just, it blocks all powers, and it's just left and assumed that the alien powers work exactly the same as superpowers, and they do, and it works 100% guaranteed all the time, and there is no modifications needed to do to make it work on alien powers. That I found was a bit stupid and a bit of a contrived plot device. But anyway, in the naughty route, in the passion route, fierce route, whatever it's called, he has to break the oath to save your life, and you're like, I trust you, I'll give you back the power to kill me because I know you're not going to do it, instead you can use it to save me. In this route, it also happens, but it's not a situation where he needed, like, it wasn't even remotely like you needed his power and he couldn't do this without him. It's literally just, you fell from a skylight into the room full of the evil guys you were trying to ambush, and no reason is given whatsoever for why the other two superheroes, Kaine and Eok, who are also here, couldn't save you instead. It's like it is said, like, oh, you fell down really badly and, like, you twisted your leg or something and you can't walk. So there's a reason why you yourself can't save yourself, but, like, so they literally created, like, a contrived circumstance where the other two superheroes wouldn't be there and the only person who could save you was him. And it seems so mundane and bad to, like, the only reason I had to break the oath is just because I needed him to pick me up and walk out the room with me. That's all he does. He doesn't even, like, fight and defeat them all, he just grabs you and runs away. So that's one way where I do think like the Dom Benotti, the whatever it is route did handle this better. Oh, also that's the thing, in this route, despite all your plans going wrong, you succeed entirely in this mission. You capture Kain's evil dad and he gets taken care of off screen and does not join in the final confrontation with the other alien guy in the end. In the other route, everything you do in your plan goes off perfectly. You plan correctly, you don't fall through the skylight, but you fail completely and utterly. Kain's evil dad gets away and he joins up with the alien villain in the finale. You lose your powers, Kain loses his powers, everyone loses their powers except Jaemis, and the entire rest of the ending plays out totally different because of that. I think it's a kind of a strange choice to make it have like the route where you literally fail is the route where you don't fail. And the route where you do everything correctly is the route where you're blamed, like, oh, everything going wrong was your fault. So I do wonder if maybe these scenes got mixed up or something. Or if it's just meant to be dramatic irony, I guess. Oh, this was a really funny scene that came out of nowhere and didn't serve the plot in any way, but I'm just glad it existed. For no real reason. When you're recovering from your injuries, they write you like really high on painkillers, and it's really funny how even the narration in the boxes is written like totally out of it and you're really, really silly. I just found that really funny. It's only like 10 sentences max, but it's really funny. It's a nice little moment to like lighten up attention, I guess. They don't even really use it to like progress like the romance plot. It's not like, oh, you start hitting on him in your stupor or anything. It is literally just, I reach my hands out to Jaemis like a kid trying to grab a cookie. Then again, Jaemis is a snack. I'm sleepy, let's go home. He looks at me strangely. What do you want from me? Grabby hands, carry me. Yeah, anyway, this is a dramatic scene of Kain confronting his evil father, and it means practically nothing because like, it would be dramatic if it happened to anyone. It's happening to someone we barely know, and like again, it's a shame because like there was so much good establishment of his character in the first chapter, and he just doesn't appear until this very moment. Like he literally finds out his dad is evil right before he goes to stop his dad. We have no idea really much of his feelings until this scene, and it's just I do wish he got more involved in this. But then again, the game is already saturated with so much screen time for the side characters and barely anything for Jaemis, so I guess they kind of at the last minute went, we have to prioritise somebody less than Jaemis. We have to give somebody less scenes than Jaemis. But yeah, like I said, I do appreciate that they just made the abusive father just 100% abusive, and it's not, oh, he had a good reason, oh, you were wrong to run away and leave him, like, oh, you should understand more, he was doing it all to protect you. No, he is genuinely awfully abusive, and Kain is right to cut him out of his life forever. And you get to cathartically punch him in the face. In the other route, you get to cathartically kick him in the balls. I like how route exclusive beating the shit out of this man. Genuinely really good writing for Jaemis's continuing moments of like finally owning up to his shitty behaviour and stuff. I really like this line. I felt seen. Thank you for treating me with respect. That's just such a good way of like summing up like exactly why what he was doing was wrong the whole time. It's like this really like surprised me after an entire route of like so many characters and the protagonist herself being like, oh well, he kidnapped me, but he didn't like do as bad as he could have. I guess that's okay. And like, oh well, I guess he's probably good. It just really helped like at the end to go like, yeah, even if you weren't as good as you could be, you were still really hurting me and really degrading me, and like verbally abusing someone can still really hurt. And how much better it feels to feel like he's finally actually seeing you and judging you for who you are and not like making up his own narrative in his head of who you are. And I like just basic respect. It is kind of funny we've got to chapter 25 to get basic respect. Chapter 21 to have a civilized conversation. Chapter 25 to have basic respect. Chapter 26 to have actual romance happening. By then we only have 3 chapters left. Really, they crammed all of the good writing into the very end. I'm going to spend more time with this, Jaemis. Now for the first and only chapter where romance happens at all. In the previous chapter, you broke the pact oath of Jaemis in a big moment of heated emotion, which was kind of a letdown in this route. Now he is not magically prevented from killing you. He now makes a 180-degree change in absolutely everything about his entire personality, and it's great and wonderful, and they cram in like a whole bunch of genuinely really good and emotionally effective writing, and like I end this chapter against all odds shipping it. All the signs have been there. No, they fucking haven't. No, he has had no signs whatsoever of liking you until this very moment. I do feel like the writers just overcompensated by having everyone say that romantic tension has been happening without actually showing it, to make up for the fact that they forgot to do it for half the game. Over half the game. It's kind of like, we have a good romance through for him, I promise. Honest.
At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen.
Yes.
May I see it?
No.
Oh, and here is a moment where like you get to choose between like, I understand why you did, but I don't forgive you, and like stuff like that. It's a really good moral choice, and I genuinely like it. And here we have Jaemis' dialogue of him calling himself the fuck out, so I'm just going to show you all of the best highlights of this. Veritas, the evil overlord guy, did all this awful shit. I'm not any different from him. Realising that he has just been perpetuating the cycle, he's just been becoming as bad as the guy you saw before. The way he was treating you just for being an earthling and like not having any sympathy for you losing your planet. He had become cold and hard, and he'd gone beyond the point of like just, I have to survive by doing whatever this evil guy tells me to the point where he genuinely didn't care about the consequences of what he's doing. He stopped feeling bad about it, as opposed to Eok, who also had to do all these awful things, but he still felt sympathy for his victims, and he still tried to do what he could to like start this underground rebellion. Again, Eok just has a better plot. I'm sorry, man. What he did to me, I did the exact same to you. I became a monster. I don't want to be the person who destroys homes and families anymore. You seem to hold a power over me I cannot fight. At this moment, I liked that because it's like, it is like, oh, this is supposed to be kind of a shippy moment, and it's like, oh, he feels love for you, but also it makes sense just in a platonic context of what's happening. It's like, you hold power over me to like hold a mirror up to my face and make me realise what I'm doing. Like, you have the power, like, you've always resisted me, you've never like capitulated to my demands, you've never enabled me in my shittiness, and I realised all along that you were doing what was right and you were trying to help. And like, now I'm going to actually cooperate you and respect you as an equal, and like acknowledge that literally everything you've done was right the entire time, and I was the one who was a wrong, stupid bastard. And I fell to despair and became just as bad as the awful man I was thinking I was fighting by being so aggressive and cold, and just really, really good. Really good. And then anyway, it goes from this into the actual romance finally starts in chapter 26, and it's very fast, and it comes out of nowhere, but it's genuinely really sweet and really well written. And he's just 100% different from that. We've gone, literally just in the space of 2 chapters, we've gone arsehole Jaemis to full-on amazing nice Jaemis, who regrets everything he's done, has totally 100% changed how he reacts, how he speaks, how he does everything in every possible way. It's also really well delivered, how they have like a supernatural like alien culture aspect to the romance. It's like after the big speech after him, he's like, come with me, I'll show you what it feels like to fly. And then he grabs you in his arms, he swooshes you off, and he has this big wonderful flight through the stars, like completely wowing you. And then he sets you down by the bank of this like sparkling starlight, beautiful lake. And then he flies in the sky and he does like firework effects of his glowing Phars powers. It was like, wow, it's like a dance in the sky. Is this the mating ritual of the alien guys? Is this how they woo their partners? And he comes down, he's like, thank you for trusting me, thank you for making me realise I was wrong, and being all emotionally vulnerable, and telling you all the reasons why he loves you, they come very fast, but they're all very reasonable. It's like, I love you for all the reasons I hated you at the start, and I was totally wrong about hating you, and it just feels so genuine and nice. And it's really sweet that they're doing all this, they have this big romantic scene of smooching in a pond under the water, with the glow of his markings making it shimmer like the stars above, and it's all really fucking good. Here is a CG image of it. It's really pretty and lovely, and it's kind of weird how it only displays at the very end of a scene after all the dialogue describing that he's doing all this. I do feel like that was maybe a bit weirdly misplaced. Because I did say, are they really going to describe all this and not show it? And they do show it in the end. The only complaint I have about the CG is there's awful lot of emphasis put on both of us having really, really fat butt cheeks and thighs. And I feel like going for fan service over really, really nice romantic moment, it kind of hurts the scene, because the entire context of the scene is just pure romance and not any super sexual stuff or anything. So it did feel kind of like a weird punchline at the end of a scene, suddenly fat ass. But aside from that, it's one of my favourite CG images in the whole scene, in the whole game. Oh, here's also a thing, is you know how at the very start of the game, in the warnings it said, warning, non-consensual imprinting, and I was like, we're almost at the end of the game and that's never happened. This is where it actually comes in, is That was a really non-indicative warning as well, because it turns out imprinting means something totally different in this universe. Like, from our description, I thought it meant, like, Twilight imprinting, like, being forced to love someone against your will because they're your soulmate. But no, here it's just, you can tell someone is your soulmate because his species, the Rahu, their heart makes, like, a musical sound that only their destined mate can hear. And that's, like, a really cool... Again, it makes them feel more like magic rather than aliens. If earlier you had the scenes of, like, trying to teach him what a nod means, and it's like, oh, I don't care about your human customs, I'm never going to remember that. Then here, you can choose your yes to the confession to be you giving a nod, and him being like... The significance of a small gesture breaks all of Jarvis's barriers, and, like, he blushes and like, for the first time in front of you, and, like, it's a really good emotional moment that really shows, like, how far you've come, even if it was really, really way too fast, but, like, I really liked that moment. I also liked how it was optional, so how if you don't necessarily want that to be the resolution, you don't have to go for it. Anyway, then they completely ruin it, because you know what I said about the imprinting? Here's what I said about the imprinting. Because it's like he bites you and he injects his blood and stuff like that, and you're like, what the fuck, why you bite me and inject your blood? It's like, I was completing the imprint. The what? The what? The way his species works is they all mate for life, and they have like a biological way that they enforce it. Is they have to share blood with each other. It bonds them forever, and they can physically never like have sex with anybody else ever again in their entire life. They could have just left it as you know you're a soulmate because you can hear the heart. Instead, it completely fucking like. Platonically clock. It's like he cock blocks the scene, but like for romance rather than sexy. When you hear non-consensual imprinting, you think someone's gonna like sexually assault someone and force them to be together. That's not what happens. It's another situation of a cultural misunderstanding and accidentally sexually assaulting someone without realizing, and it just takes you out of the moment so much because. And again, Jaemis was not intending to force you into this bond pact. He didn't know that humans don't do this. And you didn't know that his species does do this. Like, he's like, oh, this one naturally comes after giving someone a smooch. It's basically like giving you an engagement ring, almost, but like a biological one in your blood. So yeah, it completely cockblocks the moment. You go back to not trusting each other again. Immediately after, it's like, oh god, I thought we finally made some fucking progress. But no, instead you just like push him off. You're like, I don't know if I want to be with you anymore. This is terrible. And like, oh, like I knew I wanted to date you, but I don't know if I'm ready to commit to marriage yet. And again, it's a conflict that's completely artificial and resolved immediately in the next chapter. She raises every important point, like, just because you want to date someone doesn't mean you should rush into marriage, and like, I've only known you for 6 months, I don't think we should rush into marriage. Then, by the end of the conversation, she's like, oh, actually, okay, I'm fine with rushing into marriage, and it's never brought up again. It was a complete non-conflict. And they could have just gone without this scene ruining the genuinely beautiful moment, and just, like, pointing out how... Like, just because you're attracted to someone doesn't mean you necessarily know that they're right for marriage yet, and, like, why it's important to date. Like, that's the thing, his culture doesn't have a concept of dating, so he didn't know what she meant when she was saying it, and it's just, again, a situation where I just feel genuinely uncomfortable and sad for both the characters, because neither of them was disrespecting each other's consent. They just didn't know that their species has a different definition of what consent is, and it's fucked up and sad. It's a contrived situation to push another fucking blockade in front of them. And we waste half of the next chapter on being negative and not actually progressing the love, and it's like, we only have 2 more chapters left, can we not? I did like this point though, where it ties it back into his backstory about how he is like a bit misinformed about how dating works and stuff, because he was raised in a situation where he didn't have any other members of his own species, except like it was only 3 children who were spared from the genocide, like raised to be soldiers by the evil overlord guy. So he doesn't know if he's fucking up the ritual and everything. It's just like how he's been told secondhand about his own culture. So I thought that was a good bit of world building and interesting like justification for why this contrived sad situation could happen, but still I wish it hadn't. Oh yeah, and here's an interesting thing. Because you did the bonding ritual with him, you share your superpowers. Depending on whether you're on the naughty or nice route, you gain a different superpower from him. On the nice route, you gain his regeneration power, and on the naughty route, you gain his phasing power, which is like the berserker state, which lets you like glow your eyes and go Super Saiyan, basically. So I guess that's the reason why it had to happen plot-wise. I don't get why you couldn't have had to happen plot-wise, but like him just saying, oh, this is what we in our culture do when we date someone, when we bond with someone, when we find our soulmate, and her going, yes, okay, I consent to doing that. Not in those exact awkward words, but like, yes, take me now, or whatever. Like, you could have just had this happen consensually. One also good thing I like is like, they really go out of their way to make sure this imprinting stuff is not in any way forcing you to be with someone you don't want to be. The situation is like, he now biologically cannot date anyone else because that's how his species works in the blood. But because you're human, he doesn't think it's going to apply to you either. And also, he's so apologetic for what happened that he's totally willing to let you go out and date someone else instead of him and ditch him. And he's like, for the rest of his life, he's fine with like being alone and never having anyone else again as the consequences of him fucking up so badly at dating you. And again, he has changed so utterly in the space of just 2 chapters. He is now like, I respect consent and I love you in every possible way. I'm going to do every nice thing ever. And I really wish they'd spread this out more throughout the route. But anyway, she just goes, okay, now I'm okay with marrying you and the conflict is over. And they do just commit to being a lifelong relationship and they barely know each other for 6 months. And he's only been nice and romantic to her for like 2 days in universe. You had a long route, you had a 12-hour game and somehow you still rushed it. We made it! The final chapter! Well, one route version of it. In both routes, this is when you finally face off against the big dictator guy. He's come to invade Earth. You did not make any progress on your training arc, yet somehow you're prepared to fight him anyway. In the nice route, you're much more prepared. Because everything went well in the previous plot about Kane's evil dad, you don't have to face against 2 enemies this time. You're going into this all fully powered up with a team of everyone and a big plan. You can do this! Big dictator guy attacks, you and your new boyfriend have a honestly really good scene of fighting together as a team and it's all really romantic and cool. Honestly worth the price of admission, that one scene alone. Then unfortunately you take him out in kind of an anticlimactic way. You just shoot him with the anti-superhero powers serum, which inexplicably works perfectly on aliens exactly the same as humans. It has to work this way to make the contrived ending happen. It does make me again think, why is it so rushed in the last 5 seconds, but oh well. You do that, it's all sorted, big happy day. Nordus never comes back and never resolves his character arc. Lana, for some reason, becomes the queen of the now freed civilization instead of letting the indigenous people actually run their own hometown. But comparatively speaking, it's a good ending. Jaemis has decided, actually, yeah, I love you 100%. I'm going to give up on going home. I'm going to stay here on Earth and actually be a superhero now. You see, it's plot parallels, because you gave up everything to instantly be married to this guy you've only known for 6 months, and now he's doing the same. Doesn't that make it slightly less terrible? Anyway, let's go into more detail. In the ending, like, superhero racism is somehow ended because you fought some aliens. It's not even after you fight the aliens, it's like before you fight the aliens, you just announce that aliens are coming, and then suddenly Kane and everybody else, like, reveals a superhero identity. It makes at least more sense in the nice route as opposed to the naughty route. In the naughty route, it's not started by Kane being the one who, like, starts it all. It's just like, oh, by the way, you hear over your phone on social media it's happening. In this, it's at least an inciting incident, like, the evil government guys are, like, trying to cover it up and be like, oh, Kane, come out here and, like, tell them these false lies and say that your dad isn't the guy who was running it all, and, like, we've totally got the aliens under control, and he's like, no, actually, my dad was evil, he's the one who caused all this, there's aliens coming, everyone needs to be aware of them and get prepared, and also, here's my secret identity, we don't need to have secret identities, we don't need to listen to these evil government guys, blah, 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 blah. It's another nice scene that would have been nicer if we had had more establishment of who Kane is and why we should care first. Also, I never mentioned, but the evil anti-superhero is called Julio, and I just, the first 5 times I heard that with no explanation of what it is, I was like, who is Julio? Is there a random Brazilian love interest I didn't know about? I was like, wow, there's another guy I want to date more than Jaemis, this guy I've never heard of, and he turned out to be the name of a villain group instead. Anyway, at the very end, we finally get Jaemis' evil brother Caleb coming back, him and his 2 equally evil split personalities, and he has not appeared at all, like, since we left the planet, he has not appeared or been mentioned in any way whatsoever. He's suddenly back and he's like rushing his character arc the last 5 seconds. He is not redeemable at all. He does nothing redeemable. He sees his brother is fighting on the side of good. His brother outright tells him, I'm trying to stop the evil overlord guy who kidnapped us and destroyed our entire planet. And Caleb is just like, no, I'm sorry, I trust evil overlord man. I have no purpose but beyond being the pawn of evil overlord man. I've got a big fucking man crush on the guy who killed my parents and like raised me, and it's honestly kind of uncomfortable to add any sexual aspects to that, but whatever. And then he refuses everybody, like, outright explaining to him what's really happening and that he's wrong and offering him to join us, and instead he tries to kill his brother. That's the last we see of him, is he tries to murder Jaemis, he refuses our offer to join our side, and then he just gets away scot-free, he's forgiven. It's like, oh, he was just being manipulated by the evil overlord guy, and like, I'm sure he'll be harmless now evil overlord guy is gone. Even though we had this point here where he was clearly free from any kind of control the evil overlord guy had on him. He was miles away from him. He was being directly told to his face all the ways we could save him and free him. And he was like, I don't want to be saved and freed. I genuinely believe in the evil cause. Both of my alters in my head both believe in evil. And then just at the end, it's like, I guess off screen he's had some more redeemable development, I suppose. Why didn't we get to see that? It's at least better in the other route, the naughty route, because in that route this whole fight scene doesn't exist. Instead you only see Caleb at the very end when he's like, oh, I guess he's redeemed now. So you don't get this point where he's like outright offered to be redeemed and says no first. But it's still really anticlimactic to have him set up as a villain and then like not do anything, as opposed to set up as a villain, he is a villain, and then at the end like, oh, he's not a villain anymore for no reason off screen. Also, this was a really good line. This does not exist in the naughty version because this fight is skipped. This is like one of the best lines in the end. I think it's a little bit cheesy, but it's like a genuinely really good like one liner before defeating a villain guy. Like Caleb, the evil brother goes, we could have been great. We could have ruled the galaxy. Oh, Jaemis, how you've fallen. Jaemis responds, I haven't fallen. I have ascended. His blue eyes fix on mine, the protagonist. Here we go. He's ready to attack and I'm ready to restrain. And it, honestly, this route is it's really good. It comes off like a dom for dom dynamic rather. Like, it's weird how this is defined as being like the submissive nice route when you do not act in any way submissive and nice. It's just like, he literally says like, the reason I've changed is because you kept standing up to me and not letting me do all my shit, and like, I respect you now as an equal and stuff. And then you fight together with him as an equal and you get this badass moment where it's like, we're both dominant in different ways. Like, he's physically strong and me, I have my like literal superpowers to restrain people, and we're both gonna use our BDSM Dom powers to save the world from this guy. And then you have a really good and interesting, like, dramatically written combo attack where, like it's like you're on his back and he throws you at him, and then you pull out your spider threads and like Caleb is like a misjudge. He's like, oh, I can kill you right here, and he's like, oh, that was a distraction, and then like she's actually gonna like restrain you, and then you grab his threads and you grab him around his hands and you stop him before he can like shoot an energy blast, and then like you grab him and you pull him, and then like Jaemis grabs you and you're grabbing him, and then you throw and you launch him like a fucking catapult onto the floor and just like slam him, and he's just out. And it's like genuinely really fucking amazing, and it shows so much how much like you've changed in the relationship as well, just and letting you have this really badass moment where you're the one who saves the day. That's the weirdest thing. On the Dom route, you don't save a day. Jaemis does it all himself. It's very strange, but I'll get to that once I get to the route differences. At the very end, we haven't seen Lana or Caleb until right now, and the only things we've heard about Lana is like, there's a period where the main protagonist is like, oh, she's so evil, she was plotting to kill me behind the scenes, and then it's like, oh, actually she was like, maybe she was probably doing what she needed to do, but the fact that we don't ever see her, we never actually get to see whether Lana genuinely wanted to kill us or whether she felt conflicted about it until we get to the very end, and it's like our assumption that she felt conflicted about it is just proven correct all over. Like, all the things we say about how she was actually protecting her brother and all that, it's all proven correct. Like, everything we predicted was correct, and she just runs in the last minute and is like, oh, by the way, now you defeated the evil overlord guy, now I will rule the planet and be a much better queen. And we all just unquestionably let her do it and believe she'll be a better queen, even though we had a whole ass arc of doubting whether she's actually evil, and we haven't actually had it proven to our face that she's not evil yet. It's kind of again rushed. There's also a good point to point out, the way you take the evil overlord out is, again, it's so frustrating. Like, for no reason, the anti-superhero formula just works on aliens, like, no questions asked. It stops every ability that is not a baseline human, somehow. And somehow it knows that. Even on species which don't have any human DNA, it somehow just knows that. And it's so infrequent that they allow the main protagonist to actually do something creative and interesting with her power to fucking shoot threads through anything and stick any two things together, ever. Even in this fight, she doesn't use it very creatively. It's just like, oh, I made a rope and I tied him up. Like, there are so many ways you could have used that creatively in a fight. Like, even just looking at his background behind, so I was thinking, like, what if you got a thread, you stuck two sides of it to, like, that lamppost, that bench, and you made him, like, fly together and smack the guy, and it's like, you have the guy in the middle and you just keep throwing out threads to every possible thing in the distance. You keep smacking him all into him until he's like, you're keeping him restrained in like a big like cocoon-like ball of like every bit of furniture around you until like Jaemis can come in with his big super punch in the end and stuff. Like, there's so many ways you could have done this. Like, and again, the way that she said right at the beginning is like, I could pierce his heart with my thread. And here we have a situation where the way you resolve this is piercing him with a thread, and you don't even think about piercing his heart with a thread, like he said in the first 5 minutes of the game. Hell, the guy is fighting by shooting giant plant vines everywhere. That's his superpower. Why do you not use your afraid to tangle up his friends? Why do we not have a Fred versus Fred battle? Why do we not have like one Fred on him, one Fred in his own fucking spaceship, comically crush him with his own spaceship he used to kill all those other people? Come on, man. Also, I find it so funny how, in the end, after a whole game of her not finding any creative ways to use her power, she has to have someone else explain to her how her power works and how she can use it to inject the virus into the guy's blood. Why of all people is Kane the one who figures it out? Gosh, I've got this bottle, I don't have a syringe. What can I possibly use which is a syringe? By literally pierce everything power. Also, for the explanation of why it's saying it doesn't stick, her power literally is to stick anything to anything, but she points out very early on that like the way it works, like her string is intangible and can go through anything, and she has to tie the end on the other end to make it stick. So it's like it takes a little while to stick two things together, but she still does, in the end, stick two things together. So it doesn't contradict what I was saying earlier. Also, after I had to laugh at his immediate inconsistency, like right after, you know what we can do? Your magical friend, which goes through everything intangibly. Oh no, we can't get to him because he's put up a blockade. If only we had something which goes through everything intangibly. There is no establishment whatsoever that her friend doesn't work on his magical vines. There is no explanation. If they just had one line like she tries to use her friend, oh his powers cancel out mine somehow. No. If anything, she should be the only one who could fight back his wall of vines. You made a villain who thematically has a different type of Fred-based power, and they don't fight using their thematically opposite Fred-based power. So much missed opportunity. Damn it, I missed the opportunity. That's the game in a nutshell. Also, this is the final cutscene you get for you and your boyfriend fighting alongside each other with your cool superhero powers. I just had to edit this caption in. This is like really cool and genuinely like power move. And it's like, this is a summary of how it is like the Dom route. Both feel badass. Neither of you like have power over the other. You're both doing like now finally having an equal relationship and like fighting together using your awesome superpowers to take out Brazilian world destroyer evil man. Or alternatively riding up to a drive-thru and he asked for no pickles. But yeah, ultimately the way he goes down is actually kind of anticlimactic. And without his powers he can't fight back at all and we just kick his ass. At least we got a really cool CG image before it happened. The level of awesomeness of that makes up of how rushed the writing was. And here we have the moment of Veritas being compared metaphorically to being also an abusive dad. And yeah, again, how rushed it is. Lana is just like, oh, you know the rebellion conflict back on our planet, I handled it all off screen, it's all totally sorted. And now literally defeating Veritas is the last thing we do and it's solved everything. Like the whole planet is free now, everything's sorted, there are no more further people who are loyalists, it's all sorted, our rebellion is taken over, I'm the queen now. It is very, very, very fast it all wraps up, and it does make me feel like, again, you could have just given the actual romance stuff a bit more screen time. And the alien stuff. There we have Jaemis again saying the thesis statement of the route and everything he's learned. It's a genuinely good moment that he acknowledges that he was mistreating his sister by accident, by like patronising her and thinking he was keeping her safe, and like now he's known from working with us, and like smartness can be just as powerful as physical strength, and like she will make a great queen. Even though we didn't get much time of seeing her and it was all resolved off screen, it does still sell the idea like she will be a good queen, even if we don't really know her very well. Also an extra bonus point of us acknowledging how Eok is super fucking awesome. We couldn't have done this without him, and he's super smart and great and wonderful. And really heartwarming is Jaemis promotes Eok to take over his former position in the army. He's now the new general in the army, which is like, I didn't mention it before, but the entirety of during the weird the buddy roommate saga, he was always like, you betrayed me, I was your general, you didn't follow rank, blah blah blah, even if you're doing the objectively right thing, it's wrong because you didn't obey me, because etc. So it means so much to have Jaemis go like, I'm going to relinquish the position of general entirely. I would rather just stay with my loved one here on Earth and like continue on my character development into becoming a nice guy. And I think you, Eok, always would have been a better general than me, and I acknowledge I was totally wrong. It's really sweet and lovely, and it's nice to hear, like, even though we're not allowed to romance Eok, he's going to have a happy ending going back to his home world and, like, being hailed as a hero by all his fellow indigenous people who are now regaining the right to rule their world, and, like, I really like how it's, like, even though Lana is going to be the queen and stuff, it's not like, oh, we're still ruling over and taking all power away from the Gowarts. It's like, no, now we're promoting the Gowarts to the highest position in our army, and like you're going to be like the royal advisor and stuff. It's good. I like how well they wrapped it up. Also, just a random, funny, out-of-context moment. The way it gets wrapped up at the end is like we have like the conflict between the possibly evil government guys. He in the end is like, oh, I'm actually not so bad. I'm just like overzealous about protecting Earth from aliens. I don't trust these aliens. And like in the end, once you push him, he does the right thing. And it's like the way it's all resolved is like, oh, I don't believe that Lana and Eok are actually good and they're going to leave and not going to invade us again. So I'm going to bring back the the plot device person whose superpower is to make unbreakable oaths where you die if you break them, and then like I'm going to prove like they're going to make an oath that they're going to be the allies of our planet forevermore, and etc. But it gives us this incredibly funny out of context screenshot. It's like, summon my cousin. They did not establish before this point that superhero was his cousin, so it just came out of nowhere and made me laugh my arse off. Oh, and here we have like, in this route, Nornus never comes back. Nornus, the little brother, never comes back. He never gets a resolution of his plot. Instead of just have everyone talking about him off screen, slightly it says like, oh, we figured out, by the way, all the entire time the brother did not actually give a shit about him. He wasn't actually trying to cure his sickness. All the time the little brother had this secret superpower which he was using to destroy worlds, and that was what was making him sick. And his brother was an arsehole who was using him against his will and wiping his memory. But all of this happens off screen with Nornus not even being here, and we don't know if he ever finds out about it, so it's kind of sad. And here we get, literally, like, for no reason whatsoever, we're believing that the evil brother has changed, even though he is right in that moment saying he still doesn't want to change, he's still loyal to Lord Veritas, even though he's gone. We just let him get away with all his crimes, and it really does work so much better in the Fierce route because we don't actually fight him, we don't directly offer him to change slightly, he doesn't directly say no and try to murder us. When you don't know that he would refuse being good if he was offered the chance, it's easier to believe, like, oh, maybe he was good all along. But when you've directly asked him and he said no, it's like, literally, why are we letting this guy get away? Why are we're not even imprisoning him? It's like Lana is literally like, oh, well, we'll take him back and he can be like a secondary guard in command underneath Eok this time. And it's like, why are you giving him any kind of power? Like, at least like, put him in prison, put him through a rehabilitation, like de-brainwashing program or something. Like, help him out in the way that you help real, like, sufferers from cults. Again, another fierce kind choice that makes no sense. How is hug him less kind? How could anyone pick to not hug Eok goodbye? A really sweet fucking moment from Eok. Princess or not, you shall always be my princess. That was a moment I was like, even though they pulled it out in the last 5 minutes and made the romance slightly better for Jaemis in the end, I still would rather romance Eok, and he still has better lines, even in Jaemis' good romance ending. For winning that route, you get a Christmas outfit. An Austrian Christmas outfit, specifically. What? Oh, and then what I found really neat is after you finish a route, you can go on here and you can fill out a Google form to tell the developer directly what you feel about the route. You can learn more facts about the route and miss stuff like that. You can fill out various questions on this is where they had to vote for which side character would you rather have another route for, which Eok has won. It's nice that this is still open and still taking responses, even though the vote itself has ended. I'd hope maybe the developer's still reading them, because I did my best to write down my opinions, what I felt about how it was a bit rushed and everything, about how Eok had more appeal, and how I just wish I spent more time with post-development Jaemis. And I hope if that gets through to the developer, I hope you're not too offended by the fact I didn't like it. I tried to be constructive in my comments as best as I could. And now the first version of the route. Things go differently. Because you failed in catching Kane's evil dad, you lose all your superpowers, and so Jaemis is left to the only one who can fight the aliens in the end. And also Kane's evil super dad ends up getting unraveled into the conflict. He gets taken out really easy. He's not really actually a threat, but it still makes everything much more chaotic and much more it's like you go down to your darkest moment before you then rise up. And I don't feel it was very well done, because in practice it just means if you are acting more dominant in the route, you kind of get punished for it. You spend the events of the route running around oh, I'm so harmless and helpless, oh, I've lost all my powers, I can't do anything to help. Jaemis just goes around and does everything for you. And in the end, even when you do regain your powers, a big dramatic moment, it's then still somebody else takes out the bad guy for you. And because of your actions, because of you losing your powers, one of your friends is now dead. And it still ends, it tries to wrap it all up in a happier way, but you also don't get a lot of the moments I thought the best parts of the route. Your initial romance confession is kind of muddied by him being extra teasy and still kind of mean during it, which I guess is supposed to be appealing to people who find those things sexy, I suppose, but it just makes him feel like a hypocrite. And you don't get the cool scene of the two of you fighting together as a duo. You just get more his shirt is off now. So yeah, I didn't like this route as much. First minor dialogue change is you think that maybe the morally ambiguous, possibly evil government guys might actually be evil and are working with the anti-super people. They don't end up doing that, but that would have been a more interesting plot. Other than just him getting a rushed redemption in the last 5 seconds. A lot of characters got a rushed redemption in the last 5 seconds. Here's the difference. In the other route, you failed to do your plan of climbing up and busting in and doing everything. In this route, your plan to infiltrate the evil anti-super organization goes perfectly, but it still fails at the end. It's a very strange contrast. Here you actually get to engage with this scene and do stealth and sneak into the room and pull off your plan. It's a very interesting plan too. Like, you go in with the powers of stealth and like you use your Fred powers to like secretly like put a noose around a leg of like the villain guy and then just yoink him off stage and grab him and run the fuck out with him. It's kind of a hilarious plan when you think about it, but alas, it goes wrong due to stuff that's totally out of your control, and you fail in this route despite in the other route you failed and then you won somehow. I guess the element of surprise from failing so awkwardly made everyone too surprised to actually chase after you when you ran out with the villain guy, which it kind of sucks. That's kind of an anticlimactic way to resolve it. In this route, you only find out about these two supers in here, so I was totally wrong about the weird inconsistent doubling being a leftover scene from this route, because here, it's a literally entirely different scene where you explain them. So, the other route has two scenes explaining the same thing for no reason. This route has like much more dramatic consequences. Like, your terrible failure results in like you all getting trussed up and like attacked by the main villain guy, and you all get injected with the anti-superpowers drug. And Kine and you both lose your powers. Jaemis doesn't lose his powers. He managed to save you all and get you out for the end. But it's like it's way more emotionally dramatic, and it's wild to think in the other route this all just went off without a hitch, and we had like, oh, okay, we'll just go spend more time doing romance with Jaemis. It is a bit of a shame in this route he has a lot less scenes of romance. It still has a really good like confession in the end. It's like, oh, I'm much better. I understand I was wrong now. But you miss out a lot of the leading up romance scenes because there is so much time devoted to this big dramatic sad arc of you losing your power. And that's one thing I really like about this route. And I'm like, why the fuck was this not in the other route? You helped Mr. Invisible earlier. You had the whole arc of like, feel like, oh, I'm being a hypocrite for not helping Mr. Invisible, I'm judging him too harsh when he's really just like, yuck, I'm sure he must be good deep down. And here you actually get the payoff. He shows up and he saves you from this situation where like you couldn't escape. You've lost all your powers. He like single-handedly like comes in clutch and rescues the fuck out of everybody. And like repays your kindness and actually gets a resolution to his plotline. He never appears again in the other room. And again, it's so unintuitive. Like, there seems to be no reason why like you being nicer to him and to everybody else would mean he doesn't come in and save you. It does just feel like they arbitrarily feel like, okay, we'll have the resolutions for half of the side characters in one route and half of them in the other route, and both of them end up feeling a bit anticlimactic and like left over and rushed because of that. And also what I was mentioning here is the moment where you break the oath is way more dramatic because you're literally falling off a building and there was no other way to save you except to break the oath, and it is really cool and dramatic, and he's proving immediately that he's not going to use his like newly regained powers to hurt you. He's going to use them to save you in like the most dramatic and romantic way ever, but in like grabbing you and bridle carrying you out of the sky and stuff like that. It's really cool. I wish this scene could have been in both routes. Also, a weird disparity is in the other route, you save a day, you resolve everything, and the evil government guy comes along and he's like, he tries to take credit for what you were doing, and like he comes off as like totally evil and awful. In this route, he was like, all along I was trying to save a day and you foiled me trying to save a day. If you had only trusted me, then I would have resolved the list. And everyone's like, oh yeah, we did fuck up, we should have trusted him. So like, this character's entire motivations and like resolution changes between routes. He still gets a redemption in the end, and then it's revealing all along he was like a morally complex person, but this particular scene doesn't like foreshadow it early. It does kind of suck to have the game just really chew you out for like fucking everything up and you ruined everything. You should have never done any of this, and you were terrible to try and do things independently on your own. When we know in the other route you doing exactly the same actions does succeed and does work and was great. It's just like the entire morality concept of the universe has changed. And this is what I was saying about how the romance is not established early on. Jaemis continues to be a genuine arsehole a lot longer. Here is the point where we were already starting to have the romance building up and him apologising and stuff. But instead in this route he's like, oh, don't have a pity party that just you've lost your powers and you can't fight. Oh, how dare you be depressed. And he literally has a scene where he picks up a bucket of water and throws it in your face and he's like, fucking snap out of it. I have no sympathy for you. I'm going to fuck off. I'm not even going to be there for you to comfort you in your time of need. And it's the weird thing, like, it's not portrayed as if he is still continuing to be nasty. It's portrayed as if he's being like tough love and what you need. I really hate this trope where it's like you're not allowed to even sit for 1 second with your depression. It's like you have to snap out of it immediately. Same thing I hated in Grexico when they had a similar thing. It's like you can't even spend 2 days being depressed about a major life-threatening event in your life. And the way, especially the way to try and snap you out of it is to be deliberately incredibly horrible to them and dragging them out of their comfort zone and scream at them they're an absolute fucking coward, rather than just showing them any kind of sympathy whatsoever. I hate how this trope is so often used completely uncriticised. The only good line in this, though, is he misunderstands the idiom couch potato, and it gets kind of a funny line Eok told me you wish to be a potato. I have learned that this is a vegetable in your world. You are not going to be a useless shrub under my watch. And yet here is the scene where he just, like, randomly, like, throws water in your face for no reason. It's like, you know what I'm going to do when I see someone depressed? Make their day worse. Thankfully, that scene does roll into being a bit nicer afterwards, because you fight back at him, you throw water back at him, it turns into you having a bit of a funny play fight, which ends up cheering you up in the end. This was not his intent. He was not intending to cheer you up with a play fight. He was just genuinely, like, punishing you for daring to be depressed, and, like, you ended up turning it into something fun afterwards. It is not presented in any way as if he was just trying to cheer you up with a joke or a prank or anything. I feel like there are ways I could have written the scene better to make it seem, like, more on his side. Also, I think the romance is much, much worse in this route. First off, because we've seen him still being an arsehole after the moment where he claims he's changed. Secondly, because when we get to the big romantic confession scene, it's more played for sex stuff. And, like, throughout the entire route, we haven't had a dearth of sex stuff. We've had so many, like, oh, he takes off his shirt and he's so sexy, oh, I'm going to forgive him because he's sexy even though he's still an arsehole. So it doesn't feel like any kind of progression is being made. It doesn't feel as much for change, like him being finally emotionally honest with you. Instead it's just, ooh, say my name, it's sexy. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, I got goosebumps, I've got such the horn for this man's body and nothing else. Oh, and here was a line I missed before where he takes you to go off flying. In the innocent route, it's not him grabbing you without his consent. It's him offering his hand and offering to show you the world. It's still really good. Like, you have changed my world, so I'm going to show you the world by taking you off on a lovely romantic flying trip. That's why I think it seems less sincere in this route, because he's continuing to act just as, like, teasy and awful and weird as he was before. But it's just like, I'm still mean to you, but also I have sex feelings for you now. And also, he pulls his own cockblock on his own romantic scene much earlier than the other scene. In this, he throws you in the water. It's like, right when you're thinking you're having a lovely, wonderful romantic moment of him swirling around in the sky and doing this cool water stuff, he tosses you in the water. He's like, ha, lol! Like, the most basic, like, childhood bully level prank, and it's just so fucking stupid. And then in the end, you even get this, like, there's so much, like, undertone that everything is more sexy and less, like, genuine, actual romantic and connections. Like, you have the protagonist being, like, a problematic idiot during that moment where he's like, I'm sorry I accidentally, like, forced you into a blood bond, I'm gonna, like, give it up, and, like, you it's free for you to go and, like, marry someone else, but me, I'm under your control now because that's how the blood bond worked. And in this version, the MC is like, ooh, he's under my control, he's fully surrendered to me. Oh, I'm just a normal human being, but I've got this alien prince being my slave now. And it's like, I guess it's one way of, like, presenting someone as being a dom, but it doesn't make them seem like a good dom. It makes them seem like someone who's, like, doing it against someone's consent or without even informing them what they're doing. It is like you're getting off on the idea of being able to actually literally really force him to do it against his will. Like, that's the thing, in BDSM you're not actually forcing someone to do something against their will. Both of you are consenting, one of you just enjoys being dominated, and that's it. Like, if you're not both enjoying it, it's not BDSM, it's just abuse. It does end with her going, no, I'm not going to do it, but it does also end with her, like, rushing into marriage immediately with him. Both versions, I do still feel it is a bit much. And then the next change here is that you do not actually go to the final confrontation with the evil villain group. Instead, you sit at home and watch it on a live stream of all things. They say it's because you've lost your powers, you shouldn't go, but, like, okay, why is Jaemis not going? Why is Eok not going either? We all sit here and let Kane go, who also doesn't have powers anymore. And we all just sit there and hope he handles it fine. It's such a strange, out-of-character, stupid moment. And I feel like it was just done in order to make the events of the routes, like, significantly different. Also, this is the only time in the entire route that you ever see this using texting interface. In the other route, it doesn't show up even once. And then what really sucks is that it feels like, honestly, this route is punishing you for being dominant. Like, if you pick a submissive route, you end up having, like, all these powers and fighting alongside of your boyfriend and having a really cool badass time and actually saving the day. If you pick being dominant, you get subbed against your will. You get a plotline of you losing all your powers and everyone telling you you're not allowed to fight and you just have to sit here and watch while Jaemis saves the entire day on his own. And then like, the last thing you do is like, oh, you have a big old kiss. It's like, oh no, don't do it, don't fight, don't leave me, no. And then you have a scene of you, like, running around the park being like, oh, where is he? I can't find him. Oh no, why didn't he let me fight with him? Oh, I can't do anything to stop anything. I see so many people around me are fighting and I can't do anything to stop it, no. Even though you had a fucking training arc, I didn't even mention that you had a fucking training arc of learning how to physically fight with Jaemis. It was like one of the actually good bonding moments you had earlier on. So, like, even in this route, even everyone points out that you did still have a training arc in learning how to do basic self-defense, you could still help out in a different way. And even though the first chapter was about you learning ways that you could help out in different ways, even if you can't fight, no, all you can do is run around in affection through the park, flailing your arms, going, oh no, where's Jaemis? Jaemis, save me, ooh! It feels like, I don't know, it feels like the game is making fun of you for picking these choices, and it's very strange. What's even stranger is that Nornus finally reappears in the plot only on this version of the route. Somehow you being more dominant in bed with a totally different person has caused Nornus to come and have his redemption arc. It's good to see you again too, I was wondering what happened to your plot. So yeah, in this route, Nornus finds out his brother is bad, and he finds out that he was used against his will to destroy plans of a power he didn't even know he had, and his brother has been causing him to be sick the whole time and wiping his memory, and he's like, I need to atone for this. And sadly, the way it resolves is like fucking depressing. It's like Nornus just kills himself. It's really sad. He kills himself to take down his brother, and we know from the other route that we could have been able to take down his brother easily on our own using an entirely different, much easier plan that would have been like anticlimactically fast. So Nornus does like a completely unnecessary sacrifice. It's so fucking sad. I just feel sad that like this was the only way they could think of a resolution to him. They couldn't have him have an actual redemption arc and come to live on Earth and like learn and make up for what he's doing. Because like again, why does he have to redeem himself in death when he didn't do all these things on purpose? Jaemis did all those things on purpose, knowing what he was doing, and he gets a redemption arc. Also, the final CG for this route is just nowhere near as good as the other one. Like, I'm sorry, but that face is just unintentionally comical to me. That's what the resolution is like. After spending the entirety of the final chapter running around whining, oh, I can't do anything because I don't have my powers, you gain your powers back through the power of the blood bond with Jaemis, and you also gain one of his powers, the power to Fars, which is, like, again, to, like, go all glowy eyes and Super Saiyan. But for you doing that, you don't seem to actually become physically stronger anyway. It just amplifies your existing powers, so you form, like, a massive cocoon, which protects Jaemis' like, unconscious body, and then you don't take out the villain. Nornus takes out the villain on his own. All you do is you protect Jaemis from also dying in the big explosion. You have this big dramatic moment of gaining rage powers, and all you do is an inherently submissive act. It's like, it's so bizarre. In the submissive route, you are an active participant in the fight who defends Jaemis as much as he defends you. And you physically take out the villain yourself. In this route, all you can do is protect people while someone else does all the work for you. You spend the entire velocity having two different men do all the job for you, and this big moment is supposed to be dramatic and supposed to be empowering and you gaining a cool power is just used entirely for, like, you continuing to be a supportive character. So yeah, it fucking sucks. Nornus, as he's dying, says, oh, I deserve this is good and this is correct, and like, for things that he did unintentionally while being manipulated by an evil man, and was not conscious of when he was a literal baby. Like, that's the thing, like, he was a newborn baby when his powers first manifested. Ever since he was a literal baby, he's been having his powers used against him to destroy planets. And he's like, oh, I have to take responsibility for this thing I literally didn't do myself and was too young to remember. Versus Jaemis is like, oh, he can survive for, like, outright killing two of his soldiers early on in the game with, like, very little justification for it. Also, what's really interesting, and in a bad way, interesting, is that in this route, Lana is portrayed as, like, not morally grey, but in fact, the evil one. In this route, you don't get to see the other brother have his big scene of, like, proving he's evil and awful, but you do get to see Lana come in and say, hey, I'm the one who told Nornus that he killed people when he was a baby and put him into this literal suicidal level of guilt to use him as a weapon to take out Veritas. And it's like, fucking hell, Lana. You were great, and you seem like you're going to be a good queen on the other route. And like, no, in this route, it's like, no, we were wrong thinking she's actually good, and she was actually good, great the whole time, she'll be a great queen. And it's just like, again, why would me being submissive or dominant change the moral compass of two entire people? And the extra annoying thing is that it resolves the same way in both versions. In both versions, Lana becomes the new queen, and Caleb gets away with no punishment whatsoever. Despite in each route, one of them being portrayed as more evil and like not accepting redemption compared to the other. They both still get a redemption anyway, and either way you're dissatisfied. Also, one bit I found really, really frustratingly confusing is they try and play it off as like, oh, maybe Nornus is still alive because we found a seedling coming out of his dead body, and like maybe his spirit is still inside of it, and like the protagonist insists on calling the sapling Nornus, and it's like, I'll take care of him and I'll raise him to be my own, and like it's played as if this is actually genuinely he's reincarnated and he'll come back as a child or something. But first introductory scene with Nornus was him raising a small white seedling in the dirt, and being like teaching you how to raise the small white seedling in the dirt. There was no indication whatsoever that the small white seedling in the dirt is the baby form of their species. As far as we knew and as far as it was presented, that is just a random plant he was raising. So to me, a more logical explanation, rather than the baby form of this species when they reincarnate looks exactly the same as the plant he was raising earlier, is that it's just he had the plant he was raising earlier in his pocket when he died, and that's the only thing that got left behind. And you're raising the plant he cared about. Why couldn't you just presented this as you're raising the plant he cared about, rather than faking us out with the idea he might get reincarnated when it seems blatantly obvious he won't? It just made me sad. And if they do actually, like, in a sequel or something, make it canon that he did reincarnate, that just makes the previous scene really confusing. Like, why was he raising, like, the baby form of one of his siblings in the garden? Why has no one ever talked about him having a third sibling? And, like, I don't even. Also, more in this route of characters getting away with, like, no consequences. In this route, you literally lie about everything and like, give the morally ambiguous, possibly evil government guy all the credit for saving the day. Like, this is even before it gives him his one moment of, oh, actually, he is an honourable guy deep down. And yeah, that's the only excuse we have for, like, why we're trusting Lana, even after she pushed an innocent young man to his death, like, manipulated him to fucking kill himself, is, well, we have our magical plot device person who makes unbreakable oaths, so, well, we can make her make an oath that she won't do anything bad again. It's such a letdown compared to the other route. Well, I was ending it, like, genuinely liking Lana. Now I'm like, was she like this in both routes? We just never got to see this side of her on the other route, and is she a comic Houdini getting away with it on both routes? And yeah, in this route, the whole superheroes are posting face reveals, superhero racism is over thing just comes as a random final note at the very end of it, and there's no real catalyst for why it happened. Somehow everyone mistook you defeating aliens for a protest against, like, superhero racism. Somehow. Also, in the continuing genre of side characters getting a resolution who didn't get it in the other route, Spiegel comes back and actually finds out that you're dating Jaemis, as opposed to the other route where I don't even know if he ever finds out and he just kept it secret like arseholes. But it is kind of funny how it's like, oh, by the way, I'm fucking Jaemis, and Spiegel is just like, okay, I'm getting my gun. To be fair, all he has ever seen of Jaemis is Jaemis being an arsehole to you and leaving you depressed and awful and throwing a bucket of water at your face when you were depressed and awful. And he didn't get to see any of the scenes of Jaemis, like, suddenly changing in the last 5 minutes. So it is kind of funny, but also I do hope that we do explain it to him off screen, and then, like, they do finally, like, get to have a positive relationship as brother-in-laws later on. Because, like, it is a bit of a lame way to end this side plot. And then we end it with, I found it mildly funny that the text glitched out for saying move on to the next route. So, overall, what is my verdict on this route? Well, I think I've made it clear enough. I don't like how long it takes to get to any romance whatsoever, and I do like all the side characters, and I wish that they either had their own entirely separate routes, or they were an option to pick for the end on who to romance, or they just to balance the screen time between the side characters and a love interest, because it does just feel like you go so long doing one plot line and then completely abandoning all the others, then we move on and go back to the previous plot line and we completely abandon the other one we built up. Like, we spend half of the game in this alien world of all these aliens, and then, unless you make specific choices in the ending, you never see Ornus ever again. And no matter what you do, you never see Bilius ever again. You never get a resolution to his plot. You never find out if he actually did start dating Lana, or if he did, like, find any other survivors of his home planet or anything. After the two routes, I unequivocally prefer the kind route. It is genuinely, I think people who are dominants would enjoy that route more. It's so unintuitive how the choices work in this route. You generally get the choice between being a dom and being a submissive, and then the opposite way around of how you've acted throughout the entire game. But I have to agree that the passionate, fierce dom route does have some better scenes, which I wish were also in the other route. I do wish that they just combined the two routes. Like, there's so little actual defining difference between them. It is just like, in one route you have this big, like, I think that it should have always gone that you had the big failure moment and losing your powers, and then regaining the new powers through the bonding with your love interest. Like, that worked really great. That was a good plot point. I just wish they hadn't done it with you whining around being all powerless and not fighting them and only gaining the new powers at the very, very, very end after it's too late to save everyone. And I wish they had Ornus come back but not die, and instead you and your amazing love interest powers of teaming up and doing a cool battle pose together actually saves the day. Like, take the good scenes out of a very shitty passionate route and shove them back into the very good nice route. Actually resolve all the side characters, please. Also, add one for Bilius. He's the only side character in neither route gets a conclusion. Even the fucking bizarrely minor character evil government man got a resolution. Even his summoned cousin got a resolution. Also, I genuinely think you could make, like, multiple different really good routes out of this. Like, if this had been, like, not just one really long route for single, if this had just been made into its own separate game and you could devote more time to routes, there's so many good ways you could have done this. Like, if you could have done, like, a route where you actually stay on Earth and you actually continue doing the superhero plot. You could have done a route where you went with Norns, you could have done a route where you joined the rebellion yourself. Could have done a route where you go against them and you side with the evil overlord or whatever. Or you side with the humans who want to destroy the aliens and don't believe that some of them are actually good and they're just being controlled by a bad guy. You could have gone a route with Norris and found out all this information about him, like, naturally, rather than just being told, like, after the fact that someone else found out about it, and, like, him getting no resolution or getting the resolution of dying. And you could have put romance earlier in the route. You could have consistently fought challenges. You could have made the guy act consistent. You could have had signs he was good earlier on. You could have had this stuff happen earlier on. You could have just not crammed all your good writing into the last 5 seconds of the game. I'm so glad, like, if it was not for the really great side characters, I would not have persisted long enough to even see that this guy gets better at the very end. And that sucks because he was so better at the very end. It was such a good power move and, like, final couple showdown in the kind route. I really think that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I made this big-ass fucking video about it. I didn't just let it go. I didn't just leave it at the 30-minute review. I knew that I would have feelings about this. I knew there was wasted potential. And I'm glad I played the whole thing, even if it was, like, really fucking long and fatiguing. I could see so much wasted potential in it, and I got really passionate thinking about all these ideas. Hell, if anyone's interested in it, I would be happy to make another video where I talk about my headcanon ideas for what rewrites I would do. I would love to make fan art for what on earth a female Gout looks like. Come on, man. Of all the wasted potential, you wasted an entire 50% of a species' population. So, phew, we're going to leave it from there. And this went a lot longer than expected, so I think I'm going to split up the video into 2. I'm going to make one section on, like, just the base review of the game and the half an hour I played. And then, like, hey, I also played the entire game. Here's a fucking massive, like, it's not a video essay, but it's, like, video essay length. And that's kind of funny. I had so much to talk about bad things in the game. If you haven't seen it already, pop over to the other video to see my first impressions on playing the game initially, and when I played the first half an hour but then lost my footage of it, and all the information I found about the development of the game and the behind the scenes and stuff like that. A lot of fascinating stuff you might enjoy. And if you have seen that, come and watch this video. But you wouldn't be hearing that unless you've watched this video. Oh well, goodbye!